Chapter 511. When Tiange woke up, she didn't know where she was. Her resting place was a shallow cave covered with a blanket. It was dry and clean, and there were defensive restrictions set up at the entrance of the cave, which should be Xianxia's work. She remembered that after the heavenly tribulation, she was almost exhausted. Later, she felt dizzy and didn't know what happened. Now, it seemed that they had escaped safely. She sat up and operated the spiritual aura in her body. Fortunately, although she hadn't fully recovered, her condition wasn't too bad. Her meridians and dantian were relatively stable, so she must have taken healing medicinal pills. The condition of her body was somewhat unexpected. Not only were the injuries she suffered during the heavenly tribulation healed, but it was also even tougher. It seemed that her body was reshaped by the heavenly lightning. As she was thinking, she sensed someone approaching from outside. Soon, the defensive restrictions around them were opened, and Xianxia walked in. "Tiange, you're awake? How do you feel?" Xianxia smiled when he saw that she was awake. "Pretty good." Tiange stretched her body and looked at him. "How about you? How are your injuries?" "I'm fine. My injuries aren't too serious," he said, stroking her head. "After a few months of rest, I should be able to fully recover." After being tempered by the vermilion bird's breath, his body, meridians, and dantian were much tougher than before. Although he was heavily injured, he recovered quickly. Fortunately, Tiange was relieved and hugged his waist. "Fortunately, we survived." Xianxia answered softly. "Although I'm not afraid of death, being alive is more precious." After surviving a disaster, the two of them increasingly felt that everything they had was worth cherishing. After enjoying the silent warmth for a while, Tiange suddenly asked, "Senior Martial Brother, if I didn't pass the tribulation successfully and died, what would you have done?" Xianxia, who was holding her hand, paused for a moment before he asked, "Why do you ask?" Tiange sighed softly and said, "Although I've always known that life and death are unpredictable, I've never considered that we might encounter mishaps until that moment." The moment she thought she failed to transcend the tribulation, she had a split second of regret for dragging him down with her. But on second thought, she realized that the most thorough separation was death, and this kind of separation could happen at any time. She chuckled. "If you're dead and I'm alive, I'll continue to live well. But if I die with you, I will not regret it. I think you feel the same way, don't you?" Tiange took a deep breath and strengthened her conviction. Walking on the immortal path meant facing death at any time. This was the price they had to pay for obtaining power and lifespan that mortals did not have. However, if one's hands and feet were tied because of this, not daring to love and protect one another, one would lose their Dao heart. To be afraid of losing something and not dare to possess it was the stupidest thing in the world. "By the way, where are we now? What happened next?" She sat down next to her and said, "After the heavenly tribulation, some people came to check on the situation. I saw that things weren't right, so I slipped away. Then, for some reason, the sea seemed to have caved in. We didn't dare to stop and flew for a long time. When it stabilized a little, we finally found this small island." "And Xianxia?" She smiled and said, "I really didn't expect him to be willing to use the 3 secular swords when you were going through the tribulation. That's a unique skill he has never used in front of others." 3 secular swords? Tiange remembered that when the 9th layer of the heavenly tribulation came, Xianxia's 3 swords were indeed powerful and scattered a lot of the golden lightning. Without those 3 swords, it was really hard to say whether she could have safely passed the heavenly tribulation. It's the ancient cultivation sword manual he obtained back then. She said, "I told you that the method to refine the 3 young real fire sword and the matching technique were obtained when I went on an adventure with him. At that time, he obtained the still water sword and the ancient cultivation sword manual. The 3 secular swords are the most powerful and the most spiritual aura-consuming moves in the sword manual." Speaking up to this point, he sighed and said, "Time really flies. In the blink of an eye, more than 200 years have passed. Who would have thought that we, 2 small foundation-building cultivators back then, would form our nascent souls today? Even I didn't expect it." Tiange was very curious. Tell me the truth, what's the relationship between the two of you? You never mentioned him before, but you didn't seem to be on guard against him. He seems to be a very heartless person, but he's good to you. Our circumstances are different, and our personalities are different. However, we've known each other since we were little and experienced many adventures together, so we trust each other's characters. Xianxia said, we can't be considered good friends, but we're one of the few people who can be trusted. Based on the way they got along, Tiange wouldn't believe it if someone said they were good friends. The relationship between people was so strange. Some friends couldn't be trusted wholeheartedly, and some people could be trusted, but they couldn't be considered friends. She smiled again and turned to look at her. In fact, he's also very easy to understand. He was originally a proud son of heaven, but because of his master's accident, he was given the cold shoulder. Although he seemed to enjoy the world on the outside, he actually hated the world on the inside. Therefore, he remembered people who treated him a little better. In my opinion, he was willing to use those 3 swords not because of me, but because of you. Me? Tiange was surprised. I didn't treat him well. In Immortal Palace, he deserved what was given to him, and he wasn't polite at all when they got along. It's because you didn't deliberately treat him well or badly. Although he didn't succeed, he was proud. If you sympathized with him or something, he wouldn't like you. It's rare and valuable that you treat him normally. Qin Shoujing. As they were talking, a voice came from outside. Didn't you just come to see the situation? Why did you watch for so long? You didn't take the opportunity to do something dirty, did you? She patted his forehead, wanting to hit his head against the wall. I just said a few good things about him, but he's already running his mouth. He stood up, opened the restriction, and said expressionlessly, if it were you, it would be called dirty. Xianxia was about to retort when he saw Tiange walking over. He said in surprise, you're awake? Yes, sorry to disappoint you. Tiange put on a fake smile. Dirty? How could he say that? Xianxia didn't feel anything at all. He said, just in time. You guys came out. He turned around and walked a few steps, but when he found that they didn't follow him, he turned back and urged, hurry up. Tiange and Xianxia looked at each other helplessly and followed him. Sure enough, this was just a small island. Tiange looked around and found that this island was no more than 5 miles in circumference. She could easily sense the situation on the whole island with her divine sense. The sky had cleared up, and it was sunrise. The bright red sun hung on the horizon, and the sea was sparkling. It was gentle and beautiful, completely devoid of the ferocity and malevolence of that day. Xianxia jumped onto a rock and pointed in a direction. Qin Shoujing, look over there. Tiange looked in the direction he pointed, but she only saw a small island without any abnormalities. She turned to look at Xianxia, but she found that he looked a little surprised. Where did this island come from? Yes, where did this island come from? Xianxia said, I flew around just now and found that there are several islands around us. The surrounding scenery is completely different from when we came. It's not strange for an island to appear or disappear in the sea, Tiange said. She had gone to Yaoqing's Immortal's cave in the Eastern Sea before, so she knew a little about the sea. But it's a bit strange for so many islands to appear at the same time. Xianxia paused for a moment, then said, most importantly, these islands look very familiar to me. Tiange and Xianxia looked at him, waiting for him to continue. I said before that I left the celestial pole and went to Yuanzhou, right? The two of them nodded. Xianxia went on to say, from Yuanzhou to Yunzhong, I didn't use a transporting formation, but I traveled all the way. Yuanzhou is called the Outer Sea by Yunzhong because it's separated by an ocean. The Yuanzhou Ocean isn't as desolate and remote as the East Sea or the South Sea. There are many big and small islands in the middle, and many cultivators and mortals live there. Hearing this, the two of them realized what Xianxia wanted to say and were a bit surprised. You mean, unfortunately, I once stopped on the way to one of the islands. Xianxia sighed. Qin Shoujing, we flew south that day, didn't we? Logically speaking, we should be in the depths of returning ruins sea, not Yuanzhou Ocean. One is south, and the other is east. We're very far apart. How could this be? Mo Tiange muttered. They flew south, but they suddenly saw the scenery that should be in the east. What did this mean? Did they fly in the wrong direction? That was impossible. Cultivators had a much stronger sense of direction than mortals. It didn't make sense that the two of them didn't feel anything when they flew in the wrong direction. Could it be that something interfered with their judgment? I also don't know how this happened. Jing Xingji frowned, his expression grave. But I know there must be something wrong when something is out of the ordinary. Something must have gone wrong. The three of them were silent for a long time before Qianxia said, "It's useless to talk about this now. The three of us are injured, so we'd better wait for our injuries to heal first before we plan our retreat." All right. After thinking for a while, Jing Xingji accepted Mo Tiange's suggestion. Then he said regretfully, "I don't know where those three beast cultivators went. That day, they went through their transformation tribulation, so it was a good time to take advantage of the situation." Why don't you say that day was also a good time for others to take advantage of the situation? Qianxia said angrily, "We're already very lucky to be able to escape safely. If we were a moment late, I'm afraid those nascent soul cultivators would have found us. At that time, not to mention our treasures, even our lives would have been in danger." Nascent soul cultivators cherished their lives. They always left a way out and rarely turned hostile directly. But the situation that day was quite special. After the heavenly tribulation, everyone was seriously injured. If they fought, even nascent soul cultivators would find it difficult to escape. The three of them didn't have any foundation in Yunzhong, and they had treasures with them. Many people were willing to take advantage of the situation without any future trouble. "You're right." Jing Xingji thought for a while, then nodded in agreement. He said, "I don't know where that devil cultivator boy went." Later, the sea collapsed. If he didn't have any life-saving means, he'd be in danger. "Are you talking about fellow Daoist Yang?" Mo Tiange said, "I think he's probably fine. He's Guifang Devil Monarch's direct disciple. Not only did he cultivate the primordial devil technique, but he also obtained all of Guifang Devil Monarch's possessions. With Guifang Devil Monarch's reputation in Yunzhong, he must have had many life-saving secret techniques. And we're just collaborators with him. Once we leave Immortal Palace, we can't control him anymore," Qianxia said. "Let's think about the future. What should we do next?" Chapter 5:12. The three of them discussed for a while and decided that no matter what happened, the most important thing was to heal their injuries first. Only when their strength was restored could they have confidence. Among them, Jing Xingji's injuries were the lightest. Although his 3 swords of secular consumed a lot of blood essence, his natal flying sword wasn't damaged. Qianxia's body and meridians were all tempered by vermilion bird, so he recovered very quickly. As for Mo Tiange, her injuries were only slightly more serious than theirs. What was more troublesome was that apart from her auxiliary magic weapons, almost all her magic weapons were destroyed in the heavenly tribulation. Fortunately, the place they were living now was quite safe. There were no traces of cultivators on the surrounding islands, so they could recuperate in peace. Several months later, their injuries were basically healed, and they planned to leave the island to see what happened. During this time, Mo Tiange repaired the jade bone puppet. This puppet withstood the 7th heavenly tribulation for her, so it was damaged. However, the puppet's frame was the skeleton of an ancient deification cultivator, and the other materials were also rare treasures in the world, so it wasn't damaged. She just repaired it a little and replaced it with crystal jade. As for her natal magic weapon, the Heaven and Earth fan, it was a bit troublesome. It wasn't broken. In terms of material, the Heaven and Earth fan wasn't inferior to the jade bone puppet. However, because it faced the heavenly lightning head-on, the Heaven and Earth fan lost all its spiritual aura, so it needed a long time to slowly recover its former spirituality. As a result, she almost didn't have any powerful magic weapons. It was fine on normal days, but it would be a bit troublesome if something happened. But this problem couldn't be solved in a short time. For things like magic weapons, the longer they were refined, the more power they could display. Even if she had a lot of finished magic weapons now, she couldn't use them immediately. Besides, how could a magic weapon that could attract the attention of a nascent soul cultivator be that easy to obtain? Therefore, she simply told her that since it was broken, she should refine it again. In any case, she had a nascent soul puppet with her, so self-protection wouldn't be a big problem. On the other hand, she would have an advantage if she refined the magic weapon again. Firstly, the higher their cultivation, the better the materials they could collect, and the better their refining techniques would be. Secondly, they had obtained many good things in the Immortal Palace, and they also had a treasure like the spirit-quenching water. It would be a waste if they didn't use it to refine magic treasures. Thus, while nourishing the heaven and earth fan, Mo Tiange cultivated the great heavenly thunder technique and refined the Fuxing sword at the same time. Fortunately, they took this great heavenly thunder technique from the Immortal Palace's storeroom, and the Fuxing sword also recovered its former elegance after its devil aura was removed. After a bit of refining, the two of them combined could also display a considerable amount of combat power. Qin Shoujing Imo Qingwei, come out quickly. Jing Xingji's excited voice came from outside. The two of them, who were cultivating separately, stopped to adjust their breathing. They looked at each other helplessly. What's the matter now? Qin Shi asked as he waved his hand to open the restriction on the cave entrance. Of course it's a big matter. Jing Xingji burrowed his head in and automatically dragged the prayer mat over to sit in front of the two of them. He said, I can finally confirm that we are indeed in the Yuanzhou Sea. What do you mean? Mo Tiange asked. After getting along with Jing Xingji for several decades, she could be considered to have figured out his personality. He was a person who couldn't stay idle. Back when they were trapped in the underground palace, even if he couldn't get out, he still wandered around the underground palace. Now, he was even more so. Besides cultivating, he had to fly around on his sword every day, so he knew more things than they did. A few days ago, I flew north and finally saw a big island. There are many residents on this big island, and there are also many cultivators. So, what did you find out? A mysterious smile appeared on his face. Guess what happened in the end? Judging from his appearance, it seemed the matter was very unusual. Mo Tiange and Qin Shi glanced at each other and said in unison, if you have something to say, just say it. Jing Xingji wanted to keep them in suspense, but no one cooperated. He was quite depressed and muttered, aren't you curious? Aren't we asking you? Mo Tiange said casually, if you're not curious, we won't ask. Jing Xingji became even more depressed, but when he thought about their personalities, they only cultivated every day, and one was more dull than the other, he felt relieved. Forget it, they're just two idiots. Why bother with them? A mysterious smile appeared on his face again. You definitely won't be able to guess. We were obviously in the returning ruined sea, but how did we end up in the Yuanzhou Sea? After a pause, he said, in fact, the place we're in can be said to be the Yuanzhou Sea or the returning ruined sea. What did that mean? Mo Tiange and Qin Shi didn't understand. The returning ruined sea is the returning ruined sea, and the Yuanzhou Sea is the Yuanzhou Sea. What do you mean by it can be said to be the Yuanzhou Sea or the returning ruined sea? Could it be that the two seas can overlap? You're right. Mo Tiange just said it casually. Unexpectedly, Jing Xingji clapped his hands and said, yes, the two seas overlap. What? Qin Shi was stunned, but he suddenly understood. The subsidence in the heavenly sea means that the Yuanzhou Sea and the returning ruins sea overlap? I guess so, Jing Xingji said. Jing Xingji said, when I found that big island, I learned from several cultivators that when the earth caved in that day, the Yuan Prefecture's sea was also stormy. Many islands almost sank, and the restrictions on countless small islands were broken. Countless people died and were injured. The big island they were on was fine. Although there were casualties, its vitality was preserved. After the storm, they also found that the surroundings were a bit different. The core formation cultivators on the island went out to search and found that there were many small islands in the surroundings, and the original island's positions were also slightly shifted. They spent several months to contact other big islands, only to find that things were unusual. The west of the archipelago, which should have connected to the Yunzhong Inner Sea, became a vast sea, and they couldn't reach Yunzhong. Yuanzhou was in the east of Yunzhong. After passing the Yuanzhou Sea, they could reach the Yunzhong Inner Sea, which was also the main way for cultivators to travel between the two places. After all, the long-distance transporting formation was very expensive, and cultivators below the core formation realm often couldn't afford it. Unlike the celestial pole, which was isolated, there were Yuanzhou and Shaoyang to the west of Yunzhong. The sea between them wasn't dangerous. Since ancient times, they had many connections, so they were also quite familiar with each other's situations. The path between Yuanzhou and Yunzhong was often visited by people. Now that it was suddenly cut off, it was quickly discovered. Tienge and Qin Shi glanced at each other. They both felt this matter was very strange. Didn't that mean the entire Yuanzhou Sea was moved to the returning ruins sea? This was unusual. Although they heard about small islands disappearing in one place and suddenly appearing in another place, they were only small islands after all, not the entire sea. Just the disappearance and reappearance of small islands was already strange, let alone the entire Yuanzhou Sea? What about Yuanzhou continent? Tienge asked. Yuanzhou Sea suddenly changed to returning ruins sea, but is Yuanzhou continent still in its original position? Jing Xingji shook his head. I don't know. Although it's called a big island, it's only relative to the small island we're on. The highest cultivation level on that island is only a core formation cultivator, so we can't immediately contact Yuanzhou continent. I heard that some people already went in the direction of Yuanzhou continent, but the news hasn't come back yet. After a long time, seeing that the two of them didn't speak again, Jing Xingji couldn't help but ask, "What are you thinking?" "What else can we think?" Qin Shi said faintly, "In any case, we're about to leave. We'll go and see what's going on later." It wasn't easy to find out such shocking news, but in the end, these two people's reactions were so cold. Jing Xingji was a bit dispirited. All right. Call me when you're ready. I'm going to cultivate." Right after he said that, he stood up and left. After he left, Tienge asked after a while, "Senior Marshal Brother, is it really possible for this kind of thing to happen?" Qin Shi shook his head and said, "The world is so big that nothing is too strange." "Who knows?" "But what?" He said with some hesitation, "I always feel that this matter is very strange. Ever since we left the Immortal Palace, everything has been linked together." Tienge was slightly stunned. "You mean, as soon as we left the Immortal Palace, it collapsed? Affected by the restrictions of the Immortal Palace, that independent space probably couldn't be preserved and has probably disappeared by now. After we came out, the matter of the heavenly tribulation was put aside. Right after that, the middle of the sea caved in, and the Yuanzhou Sea suddenly changed into the Sea of Returning Ruins. These things are all linked together. It's too much of a coincidence to say that they're unrelated." "Are you saying that these incidents might be related?" Qin Shi shook his head. "It's just my intuition. These things happened at the same time. It's too coincidental." What he said was reasonable. However, Tienge tilted her head and thought for a long time, but she still couldn't figure out what the connection was. After all, the whole sea suddenly changed to another place, which was too unimaginable. "It can't be a space crack, right?" she said whimsically. Could it be that a space crack suddenly appeared between the Sea of Returning Ruins and the Yuanzhou Sea, overlapping the two seas? Anything is possible. Qin Shi didn't think it was absurd. There are too many unimaginable things in this world. Even if we're nascent soul cultivators, we only know a little. Tienge agreed with this point. The higher one's cultivation level and the stronger one's strength was, the more insignificant one would feel. It was said that nascent soul cultivators had the ability to fly in the sky and burrow underground, but compared to the world, their strength was just a tiny ant. Tienge really didn't know how terrifying the power of those powerful cultivators who could contend against the world in ancient times was. Thinking up to this point, she couldn't help but wonder to what extent did one have to cultivate to achieve the so-called Great Tao? Unconsciously, she already became a nascent soul cultivator. In the eyes of the world, she could be considered to have stepped into the Great Tao, but she felt it was far from enough. What if she advanced to the deification realm? Would she still find herself very insignificant? Was there still a path after she advanced to the deification realm? No one could answer these questions. Only when she reached that step would she know the answer. Several days later, the three of them left the island and headed east. If the Yuanzhou continent and the Yuanzhou Sea moved, they could reach the Yuanzhou continent by heading east. As for the north, they didn't dare to go there for the time being. If they were still in the sea of returning ruins, heading north would lead them back to Yunzhong. Right now, in the eyes of the high-level cultivators in Yunzhong, they were human-shaped Shenkuan bags, and everyone knew there were a lot of treasures inside. If nothing unexpected happened, after they arrived in the Yuanzhou continent, Tiange and Xianxia planned to return to the celestial pole with the transporting formation Jingxingji used to get here. Chapter 5:13. Jingxingji had been to the Yuan Prefecture Sea and the Yuan Prefecture continent once. With him leading the way, the three of them were familiar with the way. Sometimes they used the transportation formations, and sometimes they flew across the sea. In less than 10 days, they arrived at the Yuan Prefecture continent. Fortunately, the Yuan Prefecture continent was still at the east of the Yuan Prefecture Sea, and nothing unusual happened. Yuan province is different from Yunzhong's celestial pole. There are no mortal countries here, and there are very few cultivation sections. Jingxingji explained, there are only immortal cities here. Both mortals and cultivators rely on immortal cities. This sounded somewhat similar to the northern Lin kingdom in Yunzhong, but there were also differences. These immortal cities have strict hierarchical city rules and individual cultivators are insignificant. It's unlike the northern Unicorn Kingdom's Devil region which relies on individual prestige to build a city. An individual cultivator is insignificant? Tiange raised her eyebrows and asked, could it be that even nascent soul cultivators are nothing? Of course not. Jingxingji answered, but nascent soul cultivators only have corresponding rights and obligations in the immortal cities of Yuanzhou continent. Everything has to be done in accordance with the city's rules, unlike the celestial pole and Yunzhong, who have independent and transcendent statuses. I see. This was the first time Tiange and Xianxia had heard of this kind of thing. Ever since they started cultivating, cultivators in the celestial pole had been instilled with the concept that the strong were revered. Those with high cultivation levels could decide the fates of those with low cultivation levels. If they reached the nascent soul realm, they could do whatever they wanted. This kind of rule, where city rules were supreme and even nascent soul cultivators were not exempted, was unimaginable to them. Jingxingji continued, it's said that the immortal cities of the Yuan continent have strict city rules, but they're also relatively lax. As long as the stipulated tasks are completed, the immortal cities won't care what the cultivators do. Even if there's a conflict with the cultivators of other immortal cities, it's mostly settled privately and won't involve the immortal cities. That's strange. This didn't sound like the clear-cut hierarchy of the government, nor did it sound like the close relationship between sects and clans. Instead, it was somewhere in between, an alliance purely based on interests. Yeah, I was also very surprised when I arrived in Yuan province at the beginning of the year. Jingxingji scratched his head and added, also, all the immortal cities in the Yuan province belong to an alliance called the Yuan Province Commerce Alliance. Merchant Union? Is the business in Yuan province very prosperous? Exactly. The Yuan province is a famous trading continent. Shops are everywhere, and there are many merchants traveling between the continents to sell all kinds of goods. In Yuan province, the status of merchants is very high, unlike in Celestial Pole and Yunzhong, where a person's wealth will only make people drool over him. Only a person's cultivation is the most practical. A thought emerged in Xianxia's mind. In that case, as long as I have money, I can buy a lot of rare things in Yuan province? That's right. The people of Yuan province claim that as long as you have money, you can buy anything. Of course, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but it is indeed easier to buy rare items in Yuan province than other places. After learning about Yuanzhou's general situation from Jingxingji, Tiange and Qin, she had a general understanding of Yuanzhou. However, a few days later, they arrived at the largest celestial city in the western part of the Yuan prefecture, Chongling City. The two of them had their eyes opened wide. Yuan province was much smaller than Yunzhong. It did not have abundant cultivation resources, and it had a large population. In the beginning, the cultivators living in Yuan province had a hard time. However, they were quick-witted and thought of a way to travel between continents and sell all kinds of items, earning a lot of spirit stones. Over time, trading became a tradition in Yuan province. The wealth of Yuan province even surpassed that of continents with abundant resources like Yunzhong. Nowadays, there were 5 major celestial cities in Yuan province. In the center was Yuanzhou City, where Yuan province's merchant union was located. To the west was Chongling City, to the east was Luomei City, to the south was Xiangyang City, and to the north was Lingxiao City. These 5 major celestial cities were the most prosperous places in Yuan province, and they were also the places where Yuan province's merchant union had the greatest influence. Similar to the rules of the celestial cities, Yuan province's merchant union didn't have the power to directly order the celestial cities under it. They were a loose organization united by benefits. Each celestial city sent representatives to form a chamber of commerce for the members of the merchant union. Each celestial city paid spirit stones to the merchant union every year as operating expenses. This fee wasn't much, and the accounts were all open to the public. Each celestial city, no matter how big or small, could check the accounts. Under the organization of the merchant union, all the major celestial cities in Yuan province were united, exchanging what they needed and advancing and retreating together. Because of this, Yuan province's trading market was well organized. Chaos in prices and unclear transactions rarely occurred. Moreover, because of the existence of the merchant union, they had equal status when negotiating with the various powerful forces in Yunzhong. It was only after they entered Chongling City that Tiange and Xianxia understood why Yuan province was called the trading continent. The whole of Chongling City was actually a huge market square. There were crowds of people rubbing shoulders on the incomparably bustling streets. There were shops and shouts everywhere. Many goods that could be considered precious in the celestial pole, and even in Yunzhong, were casually displayed outside. Tiange saw with her own eyes that an aura-refining cultivator's stall was filled with medicinal pills. This was unimaginable in the celestial pole. For cultivators, medicinal pills were scarce. Moreover, this person was only in the aura-refining realm, so it was easy for others to covet him for having so many precious things. In the celestial pole, individual cultivators only put 1 or 2 bottles of medicinal pills on display. Moreover, most of them only had 1 or 2 bottles. In addition, the 3 of them were nascent soul cultivators, so they didn't conceal their breaths. Coming together like this, no one paid them any attention. These low-level cultivators merely gave way to them when they arrived. After roughly looking at the situation in Chongling City, Tiange asked, "Where should we go to get information?" "Naturally, we'll go to the city lord's mansion," Xingji said. Although this Yuan province is governed by rules and interests, having a high cultivation level isn't completely useless. For some information, low-level cultivators had no way to obtain it, so they could only ask high-level cultivators. And the high-level cultivators were naturally in the city lord's mansion. The 3 of them walked all the way and soon arrived at the city lord's mansion. The city lord's mansion of Chongling City wasn't very gorgeous and was mainly simple in style. However, they could all see that the restrictions in the city lord's mansion were very brilliant and definitely not ordinary. "Seniors, what can I do for you?" the guards of the city lord's mansion asked politely when they saw them coming. These guards were only foundation-building cultivators, but they were neither servile nor overbearing in front of nascent soul cultivators like them. Although Xingji didn't return the greeting, his attitude was polite. "We came to look for a fellow Daoist. Little fellow Daoist, please make some arrangements." As he spoke, he handed over 2 mid-grade spirit stones. "So that's how it is." The foundation-building cultivator took the spirit stones openly and said with a smile, "Thank you for your reward, senior. Seniors, please follow me." Tiange and Xianxia were a bit surprised. Just saying that was enough? If they had bad intentions, wouldn't they be able to easily sneak into the city lord's mansion? They looked at Jing Xingji, whose expression was calm. The two of them thought perhaps this was Yuan province's custom. After following the guard into the city lord's mansion, a cultivator dressed neatly and looking like a steward immediately came to receive them. Under the guidance of this cultivator, the three of them arrived at a small hall. After ordering a servant to serve tea, the cultivator politely cupped his hands and saluted the three of them. Junior has already reported the purpose of Senior's visit. In a moment, an elder will come to receive you. Seniors, please wait here for a moment. Jing Xingji nodded and also threw him 2 mid-grade spirit stones as a reward. When the cultivator left, there were only the three of them in the small hall. Mo Tiange asked, "How did we get in so easily? Since this is the city lord's mansion, shouldn't it be more heavily guarded?" Jing Xingji shook his head and said, "What's the use of being heavily guarded? In Yuan province, no one will have any ideas about the city lord's mansion." "But because it's useless." Jing Xingji said, "To seize the city? What's the use of seizing it? Every cultivator, including the city lord, has to be bound by the city's rules. They have to do the corresponding things before they can get the corresponding rewards. This has been Yuan province's tradition for tens of thousands of years. Since there's no difference between being a city lord and an individual cultivator, why should we seize the city? What if there's a personal grudge?" She asked. "If that's the case, wouldn't it be very easy for people to sneak in?" Jing Xingji smiled. Yuan province's immortal cities don't care about personal grudges. Everyone has to deal with their own matters. Besides, do you really think this city lord's mansion is as easy as tofu? The restrictions here aren't simple. Once you enter, you'll be controlled by others. Mo Tiange nodded. "You're right. Although I don't know what kind of restriction it is, it's indeed powerful." As they spoke, the three of them sensed a cultivator approaching from the outside. The cultivator's momentum was very strong, so he should be a nascent soul cultivator. Sure enough, before long, a cultivator in his 30s with a thin face stepped through the door. This cultivator was in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. Judging from his appearance, he shouldn't be too old. He had a peaceful expression and a smile on his face. His gaze swept over the three of them, and he seemed a bit surprised. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm Yan Feng, an elder of Changling City. Greetings, fellow Daoists." Mo Tiange and the other two stood up to return the greeting and said their names. After greeting each other, the cultivator named Yan Feng took a seat across from them. He asked with a smile, "Fellow Daoists, is this your first time in Changling City? Is there anything I can help you with?" Mo Tiange and Shi weren't familiar with Yuan province's matters, so Jing Xingji was the one who spoke. Jing Xingji said, "Elder Yan is too polite. To tell you the truth, we've indeed encountered some troubles. We have no choice but to ask the city lord's mansion for help." "Oh? Fellow Daoist, please speak." Jing Xingji paused for a moment. "First, may I ask if Elder Yan knows about the tsunami that suddenly appeared in Returning Ruins Sea several months ago?" Yan Feng nodded. "Low-level cultivators might not know about this, but there's no one who doesn't know about it in Yuan province." Jing Xingji's eyes flashed with excitement when he heard this. He asked, "So, there must be something unusual about the tsunami in Returning Ruins Sea?" Yan Feng didn't answer immediately. His gaze once again swept over the three of them. He suddenly smiled and said, "I can probably guess why fellow Daoists came. Fellow Daoists are cultivators from Yunzhong, right?" Jing Xingji didn't directly answer yes or no. He smiled and said, "Elder Yan is really sharp. Since that's the case, I'll tell you the truth. Several months ago, the three of us were in Returning Ruins Sea. Unexpectedly, after the tsunami, we lost our way and found ourselves in Yuan Province Sea. This was too inconceivable, so we simply came to Yuan Province to see what happened." Yan Feng chuckled. "Sure enough. We haven't released any information about this matter. However, fellow Daoists are all nascent soul cultivators, so there's nothing to hide." He paused for a moment then said, "That tsunami didn't just happen in Returning Ruins Sea. At the same time, There was also a rainstorm in Yuan Province Sea. About several days later, the storm stopped, and we discovered that Yuan Province, along with the surrounding seas, had moved. Chapter 5:14. Move to another place? This statement was very similar to the information they heard before. Yuan Province Sea and returning ruins sea overlapped, so Yuan Province, which was originally located east of Yunzhong, naturally changed its position. Yes. Yan Feng heaved a sigh. During those days and nights of storms, all the islands in Yuan Province Sea suffered heavy losses. Many small islands disappeared forever, and I don't know how many mortals and cultivators died because of the storms. They already knew about this matter on their way here, so they were all silent now. Although these people's lives had nothing to do with them, they saw with their own eyes that some small islands with weak defenses were completely destroyed. Whether they were mortals or cultivators, they were all so insignificant in front of the power of heaven and earth. Yan Feng smiled at them. Let's not talk about this for now. Do you want to return to Yunzhong? Yes, we do. Jing Xingji's expression didn't change at all. However, we originally wanted to rely on our cultivation levels to hunt some high-level sea beasts when we went deep into returning ruin sea. Since we encountered this kind of coincidence and came to Yuan Province, we might as well take this opportunity to find some fated chances in Yuan Province and then return to Yunzhong. Upon hearing this, Yan Feng's smile became more amiable. It's great that fellow Daoists think that way. Although Yuan Province's products aren't as good as Yunzhong's, we've been doing business for many years, so we have much more resources for cultivation than Yunzhong. Especially for us nascent soul cultivators, we don't care about ordinary treasures, and precious ones are hard to find. Even if others have them, they rarely take them out. Presumably, this is also the reason why you took the risk to go deep into returning ruin sea. In a few days, there will be a nascent soul trade fair in Changling City, so you can stay and take a look. Is that so? Jing Xingji looked happy. That's perfect. Thank you for telling us, Elder Yan. Yan Feng waved his hand and smiled. Fellow Daoist, you're too polite. Cultivators in Yuan Province are all merchants. We make friends and make money with harmony. Upon hearing what he said, Emo Tienga and Qin Shi glanced at each other. Both of their gazes were somewhat mysterious. Whether in the Celestial Pole or Yunzhong, they'd seen countless nascent soul cultivators, but they'd never seen one like Yan Feng. Out of 10,000 cultivators, there might not even be one who could cultivate to the nascent soul realm. Therefore, nascent soul realm cultivators were all proud and arrogant. However, this Yan Feng did not feel the slightest bit of arrogance. However, I wonder if all the cultivators in Yuan Province are like this? After pausing for a moment, Yan Feng said, as for the next piece of news, you should be mentally prepared. Emo Tienga and the other two also became nervous when they saw how serious his expressions suddenly became. Jing Xingji said, Please speak, Elder Yan. Yan Feng said, Actually, even if you want to return to Yunzhong, it's still a little difficult. But why is that? Yan Feng paused for a moment and said, The entire continent suddenly moved. It's unbelievable. If it wasn't for the fact that it's right in front of us, even nascent soul realm cultivators like us, who are very knowledgeable, would find it hard to believe. But there's something even more unbelievable. Looking at the three of them, Yan Feng said slowly, Lian Yunzhong is no longer in his original position. What? The three of them exclaimed in unison. Jing Xingji was shocked and asked, May I ask fellow Daoist Yan, where is Yunzhong right now? Did he suddenly change his position like Yuanzhou? Correct. Yan Feng sighed and said, Several months ago, after the storm, us nascent soul cultivators gathered together to investigate what happened. The first thing we discovered was that Yuanzhou suddenly moved to the Sea of Returning Ruins. Later, we discovered that even if we followed the new route, we still couldn't reach Yunzhong. Yan Feng continued to look at the three of them and said, The Sea of Returning Ruins is located south of Yunzhong. We spent some time to determine Yuanzhou's new position, but after we planned the new route, we still saw the boundless sea and didn't see the continent in Yunzhong. Jing Xingji frowned and said, Elder Yan, Isn't there a transporting formation between Yuanzhou and Yunzhong? Even that doesn't work? Yan Feng shook his head softly. I don't know how much fellow Daoist Jing knows about formations, but transporting formations can be said to be one of the most complicated formations. A random transporting formation is fine, but a fixed-point transporting formation. There are too many things that need to be calculated between two transporting formations. If something goes wrong, the transporting formation won't work normally. Among them, distance is the most basic factor. It affects how much spiritual aura a transporting formation needs, how complicated the formation is, and so on. Whether it's Yunzhong, Yuanzhou, or Shaoyang, all fixed-point transporting formations are arranged according to the distance between the two places. Long-distance transporting formations require a lot of spiritual aura and are especially complicated. After we discovered the abnormality, we tried to use the transporting formation to contact the Chamber of Commerce in Yunzhong, but we failed. Jing Xingji's expression changed slightly. He glanced at Imo Tiange and saw her nod, so he knew what Yan Feng said was true. Nevertheless, Imo Tiange's expression became even more unsightly. Transporting formations weren't very useful for personal use. Among all the formations, she was the least familiar with transporting formations, so she always ignored this possibility. Since the transporting formation from Yuanzhou to Yunzhong was destroyed, what about the transporting formation from Yuanzhou to the celestial pole that Jing Xingji discovered before? Could it still be used? Thinking deeper, Yuanzhou suddenly moved to the Sea of Returning Ruins, and Yunzhong also disappeared from its original position. Then, was the celestial pole also in its original position? Thinking of this, she smiled bitterly inwardly. She originally thought leaving Yunzhong would only take a few years or more than 10 years to travel, but she didn't expect the passage back to the celestial pole would suddenly collapse. In order to return to the celestial pole, she spent many years preparing. She successfully reunited with Qin Shi, met Jing Xingji, and learned the safest way to return to the celestial pole from him, but in the end, this kind of unimaginable thing happened. Why was her journey home so difficult? If this continued, she would leave the celestial pole for almost 100 years. Moreover, the biggest problem was that she didn't have much time left. When she was building her foundation, she was schemed against by Wanderer Ziwei in Ziwei's Immortal's cave. This eccentric senior gave her 200 years. Originally, she thought 200 years wasn't a short time and was enough for her to prepare, so she didn't care too much about it. But no matter how she thought about it, she never expected that she would encounter so many things. She couldn't even return to the celestial pole, let alone complete Wanderer Ziwei's task. She still had more than 50 years, but now she didn't even know where the celestial pole was. But we also used the transporting formation to go from Yuanzhou Sea to the continent. If the distance doesn't change, or if it doesn't change much, the transporting formation can still be used, Yan Feng said. Therefore, the short-distance transporting formations in Yuanzhou and Yuanzhou Sea have no abnormalities. Jing Xingji was silent for a long time. In the end, he heaved a long sigh. In that case, we won't be able to return to Yunzhong in the short term? Yes. Yan Feng also had a worried frown on his face. Our Yuanzhou is a peddling continent. We don't have abundant resources, so we can only prosper today by relying on peddling. But now, we don't even know where Yunzhong is. If this goes on, Yuanzhou will definitely decline. Our merchant union doesn't dare to disclose this information. If it gets out, I'm afraid it'll cause turmoil in Yuanzhou. Yuanzhou's situation was very special. It didn't have abundant resources and relied on peddling to make a fortune, so it was destined to rely on Yunzhong's vast territory and abundant resources to maintain its prosperity. But now, Yuanzhou was isolated in a corner. It didn't even know where Yunzhong was, so how could it do business? Now that Yuanzhou had just suffered a great disaster and the merchant union was powerful, they could still conceal this information. But after a long time, how could they hide it? Apart from the various immortal cities, Yuanzhou's peddling merchants also traveled to various continents all year round. This couldn't be stopped. If the merchant union used forceful methods, it would violate Yuanzhou's peddling rules. These rules had been in place for tens of thousands of years and were the foundation of Yuanzhou's foothold. Once they were broken, there would be endless troubles. Should they conceal the information and maintain temporary stability, or should they uphold the rules and uphold Yuanzhou's tens of thousands of years of tradition? These high-level cultivators couldn't make up their minds. For now, other than finding Yunzhong as soon as possible and re-establishing contact with Yunzhong, there's no better way, Yan Feng said with a bitter smile. Yan Feng smiled bitterly. I have the same goal as you fellow Daoists on this point. This is also the reason why I told you all of this news so frankly. Jing Xingji glanced at him. Elder Yan, do you hope that we can help you find Yunzhong's new location? Yan Feng shook his head. After discovering that Yunzhong disappeared, our merchant union had already started on this matter. However, you're all fellow nascent soul Daoists, and you're also from Yunzhong. Maybe our merchant union needs to borrow your strength for something. Speaking up to this point, Elder Yan once again showed that kind of amiable smile. Besides, only by making friends can we amicably make money. Looking at this Elder Yan, the same thought emerged in the three people's minds at the same time. Sure enough, he's from Yuanzhou and has the nature of a merchant. Elder Yan. Qin Shi, who had been silent all this time, suddenly asked, I have a question. I wonder if Elder Yan can answer it? Fellow Daoist Qin, please speak. Qin Shi paused for a moment then said slowly, returning Ruin Sea has always been known for its dangers, while Yuanzhou Sea has always been very peaceful. Now that the two seas have overlapped, will this new sea inherit the dangers of returning Ruin Sea or the tranquility of Yuanzhou Sea? Upon hearing this question, Yan Feng's expression turned solemn. I didn't expect fellow Daoist Qin to notice this problem. This matter is also very important to our Yuanzhou, but right now, I can't answer it accurately. Yan Feng paused for a moment then asked, all of you came all the way from Yuanzhou Sea. Did you encounter any attacks from sea beasts? Jing Xingji shook his head. We didn't stop to rest on the way, so we didn't pay attention to this matter. Even in returning Ruin Sea, it wasn't easy to see high-rank sea beasts. The higher the rank of the sea beasts, the more territorial they were. Usually, there were only one or a few high-rank sea beasts in a sea area. Yan Feng said, our merchant union still hasn't received any news that a large number of high-rank sea beasts have appeared. However, the number of high-rank sea beasts has indeed increased compared to before. Right now, it's only a few months before it happens, so it's hard for us to conclude. We can only wait and see the situation. If that's the case, Yuanzhou's sea area was vast, and there were many cultivators and mortals living on the islands in the sea. If his guess was correct, Yuanzhou would face an even more difficult crisis. Not only would it be unable to continue trading, but it wouldn't even be able to guarantee its most basic safety. At that time, not to mention maintaining today's prosperity, even the immortal cultivation system would completely collapse. If it lost its most distinctive system and relied on its poor natural resources, how could Yuanzhou establish itself? Chapter 5:15. What are you looking at? Qin Shi came in and saw Mo Tiange buried in the table, so he asked. Mo Tiange didn't even raise her head. Her eyes were fixed on a piece of animal skin on the table. She answered, looking at a map. She bought this map when she was in Yunzhong. The territories of the three big countries in Yunzhong were delineated on it, and there were detailed marks of the distribution of spirit veins and the stations of each major force. Even some islands in the inland sea, such as North Pole Island and One Leaf Island, were clearly drawn. In addition, there were simple outlines of Yuanzhou, Shaoyang, and other continents outside Yunzhong. Even the celestial pole in the north had a rough position. However, Yunzhong didn't understand the celestial pole at all, so the positions were quite different and the outlines were completely wrong. But it didn't matter. What she was looking at wasn't the celestial pole. She pointed at the map with her fingertips. Spiritual aura streaked across, and the same picture and text appeared in midair. Looking at the map formed by spiritual aura, she pointed at the original Yuanzhou continent and moved it gently to the position of Sea of Returning Ruins. This is the current position of Yuanzhou. She then erased Yunzhong, which was closely connected to Yuanzhou. Yunzhong disappeared from its original position. The celestial pole and Xiaoyang might have also moved. Her finger fell on the celestial pole and didn't move for a long time. She looked up with tired eyes. Senior Marshal Brother, can we really go back? Of course. Qin, she answered without hesitation, the celestial pole is far enough from here. Even if it changed its position, so what? It might be farther away, but it might also be closer. With the means of nascent soul cultivators, distance alone can't stop us. We've always considered the dangers of the South Sea. Besides, we haven't tried the transporting formation Xingji mentioned, so how do we know it's useless? Maybe the celestial pole is closer to Yuanzhou, and that transporting formation can still be used. I hope so. Emo Tienga sighed and waved her hand, erasing the map formed by spiritual aura. At that moment, a summoning talisman flew in from outside the door. Qin, she took it and flicked his finger. The summoning talisman burned by itself, and Elder Yan's voice came out. Fellow Daoists, the trade fair has begun. Please come to the outer court. He let go of the ashes and smiled. Let's go. The Yuan State Commerce Alliance is well informed and has a wide influence. We still need to borrow their strength. Emo Tienga put away her melancholy and put the map into her Qiankuan ring. The two of them went out together. After inquiring about the news that day, Yan Feng very warmly invited the three of them to stay at the city lord's mansion. He also told them that even though they were not Yuan State cultivators, they could still become Immortal City's worshippers. Even if they were not willing to become Immortal City's worshippers, they could still receive missions from the Merchant Alliance in exchange for rewards. Towards nascent soul cultivators, the Merchant Union was very courteous. Even if they didn't do anything, they could stay in the mayor's mansion's guest house without having to pay spirit stones. This made the three of them truly feel that the Yuan State Merchant Alliance's unique style of doing things was just like what Yan Feng had said, making friends and making money amicably. For the Merchant Union, it didn't cost too much to give the cultivators a little convenience, but if they roped in these high-level cultivators, they might be able to obtain a harvest that far exceeded their expectations. When they left the small courtyard where they were temporarily staying, Yan Feng was already waiting for them, followed by Xingji. Under Yan Feng's lead, the three of them went to the center of the city lord's mansion. In Emo Tienga's eyes, the security of the city lord's mansion was very loose. Aside from a very powerful defensive formation outside, there were almost no other restrictions. Even the patrolling guards were very few. However, when they arrived at the center of the city lord's mansion, in front of a simple small building, the three of them immediately felt a powerful spiritual aura pressure. This spiritual aura pressure was far beyond the level of a nascent soul cultivator. In front of it, the three of them couldn't smoothly mobilize the spiritual aura inside their bodies, and their primordial spirits were also suppressed. Yan Feng saw their surprised expressions and said with a smile, "This building was left behind by a deification senior in our Changling city before he passed away. It's also the most important place in our city lord's mansion." A deification senior? Xingji was moved. Changling City actually had a deification senior? Yan Feng was still smiling, but there was a hint of pride on his face. Yes, in the past tens of thousands of years, the only senior who clearly advanced to the deification realm in our Yuan state came from Changling City. I see. I'm really sorry for not recognizing you. This small building should be a spatial magic weapon, similar to a portable immortal's cave. A portable immortal's cave like this was quite expensive, but it wasn't too rare. With the Yuan State's Merchant Union's financial resources, it could be built in any big immortal city. The most precious thing about this small building was the spiritual aura pressure given by a deification cultivator. With the existence of this spiritual aura pressure, the small building was absolutely safe. Yan Feng made an inviting gesture and led the three of them into the small building. The furnishings inside the building were simple, but it was far more spacious than it looked from the outside. A long table was placed in the center, and there were already more than 10 nascent soul cultivators on both sides of the table. Emo Tienga was a bit surprised. She didn't expect there to be so many nascent soul cultivators in Changling City. It was completely comparable to the #1 cultivation group in Yunzhong, Juyan sect. Moreover, many nascent soul cultivators were in closed-door meditation all year round or traveling outside. It was absolutely impossible for all the nascent soul cultivators in Changling City to gather in one trade fair. Based on this calculation, there were at least 70 or 80 nascent soul cultivators in Yuan State, which was not inferior to the Celestial Pole. Although the Celestial Pole couldn't compare to Yunzhong, its spirit veins, land, and resources were much richer than Yuan State. No wonder the cultivators of the Yuan province were so protective of the cultivation system of the Yuan province. If it weren't for their unique system, the Yuan province wouldn't have such rich cultivation resources, and naturally, there wouldn't be so many nascent soul cultivators. Fellow Daoists. Yan Feng cupped his hands towards everyone. These three are new fellow Daoists in our Changling City. It's their first time participating in our trade fair. Upon hearing Yan Feng's voice, all the nascent soul cultivators stood up to greet him. Once again, the three of them felt the difference in Yuan State. Almost everyone was as amiable and smiling as Yan Feng, unlike other places where nascent soul cultivators were very arrogant even when they saw cultivators in the same realm as them. After reporting their names, Yan Feng led the three of them to randomly find a place to sit. After a while, a few more cultivators arrived one after another. In the end, a smiling female cultivator slowly walked into the building. When everyone saw her, they all stood up to greet her. "This is the Lord of Changling City," Yan Feng said to the three of them. Tiange and the other two were a bit surprised. This female cultivator was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. She only had a delicate and pretty face. Judging from her appearance, she looked amiable and kind. She wasn't as kind and friendly as Yuan Jun Miaoying from Jingshu School, nor was she as skillful as Bishuan Court's Wei Haolan. She wasn't even as sophisticated as Madame Chizu from Tianyin sect on North Pole Island. However, she had a calm and steady temperament, as steady as a mountain. Standing among the many male cultivators, she naturally had the temperament of a leader. In the cultivation world, the higher one's cultivation level was, the more there was no distinction between men and women. In the aura refining and foundation building realms, female cultivators usually had a slightly lower status. Things like being fancied by high-level cultivators and having no choice but to give themselves to them happened from time to time, but this kind of thing basically wouldn't happen in the core formation realm. Nevertheless, it was rare to see a female cultivator leading so many cultivators in the same realm as the Changling City's lord. That was because female cultivators who cultivated to a high level were mostly people with firm Dao hearts, so they were rarely interested in matters of power. The Lord of Changling City returned everyone's greetings. In the end, she smiled at Tiange and the other two. "Fellow Daoists, you must be new fellow Daoists in my Changling City, right? I'm Feng Qingyu, the Lord of Changling City. Greetings." The three of them returned the greeting together. Jing Xingji said, "So it's Lord Feng. Nice to meet you." Under this Lord Feng's bearing, even Jing Xingji, whose eyes were filled with peach blossoms whenever he saw female cultivators, restrained himself. Feng Qingyu showed a faint smile. "Presumably, Elder Yen has already explained the customs of my Yuan province. Fellow Daoists, please feel free to do as you please. There's no need to be restrained." Once she finished speaking, she no longer looked at them. She walked to the host's seat and stood still. She said, "Fellow Daoists, before the trade fair starts, I have something to say." She paused for a moment. Seeing that the hall was quiet and everyone was looking at her, she continued to speak. "Several months ago, a major event happened. This event was related to the survival of my Yuan province. Because of this, all the nascent Empress elders of the Merchant Union have come out of their closed-door meditation." Upon hearing what she said, a few gasps rang out in the hall. The nascent Empress elders of the Merchant Union hadn't appeared in front of people for a long time. Fellow Daoists, regardless of whether you're an elder of Changling City or not, whether you belong to the Merchant Union or not, as long as you've reached the nascent soul realm, you're the pillars of my Yuan province. All of you are qualified to know about this. Fang Qingyu's gaze swept through the crowd and stopped on Emo Tienga's group of 3, revealing a smile on her face. Fang Qingyu withdrew her gaze and waved her hand. A map appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. Yuan Province, Yunzhong, Shaoyang, and the Celestial Pole were all marked. It was much more detailed than the map Emo Tienga gave them. Everyone, please take a look. This is the original map. Our Yuan Province was originally in this position. She pointed at the position of Yuan Province, then moved her finger, dragging Yuan Province below Yunzhong to the position of the Sea of Returning Ruins. This is our current position. She then erased Yunzhong and looked at everyone. Where did Yunzhong go? There's still no news from the Merchant Union. However, we found Shaoyang. Upon hearing this, everyone's spirit was shaken and they all stared at her. Fang Qingyu, however, didn't look happy. She sighed, pointed at Xiaoyang's position, moved it slightly, and dragged it to the right. Xiaoyang appeared in Yunzhong's position. Emo Tienga looked at the map. Xiaoyang was much smaller than Yunzhong, and it wasn't like Yuan Province, which had a wide continent. Instead, it was composed of 3 islands of different sizes. These 3 islands were naturally much bigger than North Pole Island, but it was too far-fetched to call them continents. The original position of Yunzhong was empty, and it was surrounded by the sea. Before the 3 of them realized anything, someone shouted, "Castellan, Xiaoyang is a devil cultivator who runs amok. His methods are ruthless and overbearing. Now that he's our neighbor, this is exactly what the Merchant Union is worried about." Fang Qingyu looked worried, but her tone was still calm. Without Yunzhong, how could our Yuan Province be called a trading continent? Now that we've become neighbors with Xiaoyang, it's even more troublesome. Besides, she looked at Qin Shi. The Sea of Returning Ruins overlaps with the Sea of Returning Ruins. The Merchant Union already has accurate information that the sea beasts in the Sea of Returning Ruins haven't disappeared. They're now in the vicinity of Yuan Province. Upon hearing this news, the expressions of Emo Tienga and the other 2 slightly changed. Yunzhong disappeared, so Yuan Province couldn't trade. Xiaoyang appeared as a great enemy, and there were also high-level sea beasts nearby. This was indeed a crisis related to the survival of Yuan Province. Chapter 516. The news of Xiaoyang's appearance shocked everyone present. Even the rare nascent Soul Realm trade fair that followed didn't have many people pay attention to it, and it ended hastily. The 3 of them returned to their temporary residence, laid down restrictions, then sat around the table. For a moment, the 3 of them had heavy hearts and did not speak. Originally, the crisis in Yuan Province had nothing to do with them, but if they were unable to leave, then it would be greatly related. "Tienga, what kind of place is Xiaoyang in the end?" A moment later, Qin Shi broke the silence. After he arrived at Yunzhong, he was busy healing his injuries at first, and then he entered the Returning Ruin Sea's mystic land, so he didn't know much about these things. Emo Tienga answered, "I only know that Owl Sun has barren mountains and unruly rivers. The atmosphere there is fierce, and there are many devil cultivators there. The situation is complicated, and the cultivators in Yunzhong are all unwilling to go to Owl Sunday. As for the rest, I'm not very clear. Why don't you ask me instead of her? You've been in Yunzhong for so many years, yet not only do you know very little about Yuan Province, but you also don't know anything about Xiaoyang." "That's right," Jing Xingji said as he cast a lazy glance at Emo Tienga. Emo Tienga didn't feel like paying attention to him. Although it had been so many years, she had only really lived in Yunzhong for 10 years when she traveled around the world. In those 10 years, she had traveled all over Yunzhong and had a deep understanding of Yunzhong. However, the Yuan State Merchant Union kept a low profile, and Xiaoyang didn't even want to talk to the cultivators of Yunzhong. She hadn't paid much attention to them, so how could she know? Jing Xingji said, "Xiaoyang is different from Yunzhong and Yuanzhou. It's composed of 3 large islands of similar size, which are generally known as the 3 islands of Xiaoyang. There weren't any good spirit veins on the 3 islands of Xiaoyang, and the resources were also very poor. Just like the Western barbarians in the clouds, they had barren hills and unruly rivers, and the terrain was dangerous. In a place like this, No immortal cultivation sect would set up a base here. Only some small immortal cultivation clans and itinerant cultivators would settle here. Therefore, from the very beginning, Xiaoyang has been a gathering place for itinerant cultivators. Later, I don't know when it started, because Xiaoyang was far away from the sphere of influence of the major sects in Yunzhong. Many cultivators who couldn't gain a foothold in Yunzhong ran to Xiaoyang, and most of them were devil cultivators. Although the concept of righteousness and evil had been abandoned by the people of the current world, it was a fact that the majority of the people of the demonic path had extreme personalities and were ruthless in their actions. These devil cultivators and outlaws became the new residents of Xiaoyang's 3 islands. Over time, Xiaoyang became a sinister place that all the cultivators in the cloud hated and feared. At this point, Jing Xingji concluded, in short, there's only one word to describe Xiaoyang: dangerous. Natural hazards, geographical hazards, and human heart hazards. The perilous ones had barren mountains and unruly rivers, lacking in resources. The perilous ones had strange terrains and complicated relationships, making it difficult for other forces to intervene. The perilous ones had sinister hearts, and every single one of them was vicious and ruthless. Therefore, the major forces in Yunzhong were not willing to provoke the people of Xiaoyang. There were not enough benefits, and they were not easy to deal with. More importantly, the cultivators of Xiaoyang have a very bad habit: they love to rob. That's why the Yuanzhou Merchant Alliance is having such a headache? That's right, Jing Xingji said weakly, on the merchant continent. Without a merchant partner, they've become neighbors with bandits, and there's also the dangerous sea of returning ruins. If they can't find a way out, Yuanzhou will be finished. As for us, if we don't leave Yuanzhou as soon as possible, we won't have good days in the future. That brings us back to the matter, Qianxi said. Tiange and I originally planned to return to the Celestial Pole after we left the Immortal Palace. This time, we came to Yuanzhou by chance and happened to borrow the transporting formation you mentioned. Now, our goal hasn't changed. We still have to explore whether this transporting formation can take us back to the Celestial Pole or not. He then looked at Jing Xingji. What about you? If the transporting formation is usable, do you want to go back to the Celestial Pole? Jing Xingji lowered his gaze and didn't say anything for a long time. The Celestial Pole. For him, that was a place he loved and hated. He would definitely go back, but now wasn't the time in his plan. If this matter hadn't happened, he would have definitely chosen to stay in Yuanzhou. But now, it wasn't appropriate to stay in Yuanzhou for a long time. We'll talk about it later. Jing Xingji took a deep breath. In a few days, we'll set off to find the transporting formation. Based on the current situation in Yuanzhou, the sooner we leave, the better. Qianxi nodded lightly and didn't say anything else. After staying for a few days, the 3 of them bid farewell to Yanfeng and left Changling City. Yanfeng very enthusiastically urged them to stay, but unfortunately, they were determined to leave, so he couldn't persuade them. He could only send them off regretfully. Elder, it's not like we don't have 3 nascent soul cultivators in Changling City. Why do you want them to stay? The cultivator next to Yanfeng asked in confusion. Yanfeng stared at the flight lights the 3 of them took off inside. If it was in the past, we naturally wouldn't have to do this. But now, the situation is unclear. 1 more nascent soul cultivator means 1 more power. Your vision is still too narrow. When you look at things, you have to consider the situation. The cultivator thought for a while and somewhat understood, but he was even more confused. If we're talking about the situation, they can't even find Yunzhong now, so they can't leave Yuanzhou. Shouldn't they stay in the Immortal City? Yanfeng was stunned and said with some uncertainty, maybe they want to find a place to cultivate. Although he said that, he didn't quite believe it himself. So what if they cultivated? If they came out 30 or 50 years later, the situation might not be better than it was now. They clearly knew they could endanger themselves, but they didn't do anything. This wasn't something a nascent soul cultivator would do. Could it be that the 3 of them had another purpose? The transporting formation Jing Xingji discovered was located on a small island south of Changling City. This small island didn't have any spirit veins and was only inhabited by some mortals. When he was transported to this place back then, to prevent people from following him, he destroyed several parts of the transporting formation and cautiously used magic to cover it up. Logically speaking, this small island didn't have any cultivators coming and going, and there were very few residents, so it shouldn't have been discovered. However, more than 80 years had passed, and no one could say for sure whether an accident would happen or not. Moreover, in the storm several months ago, many small islands disappeared. They didn't know whether this small island still existed or not. With such worries in mind, the three of them flew all the way and finally found the small island without a hitch. Fortunately, the heavens didn't play with them again. The small island still existed, but it had become an uninhabited island. Under Jing Xingji's lead, the three of them found the location of the transporting formation, inside a cave by the sea. When the tide rose, this cave would be submerged by seawater and would only be exposed when the tide fell. Taking advantage of the falling tide, the three of them entered the cave and went several miles deep before they reached their destination. This is it? Mo Tiange looked around. This cave was very damp, but because the terrain was upward, it wasn't soaked by seawater. Jing Xingji said that when the tide rose, the seawater wouldn't submerge this place. She looked at the mountain wall and said, "It's a bit troublesome." Jing Xingji, who was looking for traces left behind in the past, asked casually, "What's troublesome?" She pointed at the wet marks on the mountain wall and said, "Look, this should have been soaked recently. I reckon this cave wasn't spared from the storm several months ago. I wonder if the transporting formation was damaged or not. We'll know once we take a look." After finding the traces left behind in the past, Jing Xingji waved his hand and unsheathed his sword. With a sword light, he swung it at a mountain wall. Rumble! The mountain wall collapsed with a loud bang. "Found it," Jing Xingji said happily. Under the rubble, a star chart was vaguely visible. Mo Tiange waved her hand, sweeping away all the rubble, revealing the full appearance of the transporting formation. "How is it?" Jing Xingji looked a little proud. "It's well preserved, right?" Mo Tiange carefully looked at the transporting formation on the ground and didn't say anything for a long time. This transporting formation was about 15 feet in size. It used a special kind of colloid as a carrier, densely packed and forming a complicated pattern. The places where spirit stones should have been embedded were empty, and the whole transporting formation was dim. "Good my ass." She pointed at several points on the transporting formation without looking up. "These places were destroyed by you, weren't they? You really picked the important places to destroy. And here, it should have been destroyed by the storm several months ago. Even the formation's base chart was washed away. It's not an exaggeration to say it's ruined. Then what should we do?" Jing Xingji was dumbfounded. "This transporting formation can't be used anymore?" "Not yet." Mo Tiange softened her tone. She wasn't really angry with Jing Xingji, but this guy's tone was really asking for a beating. She looked down at the formation chart on the ground and said, "If we can find the raw materials for the formation chart, it can still be repaired. However, I'm not very proficient in transporting formations, and there are a lot of places damaged, so it might take a long time to repair." "How long?" She asked. 10 days at least, several months at most, Mo Tiange said, not counting the time to find the materials. She nodded. "In the Immortal Palace, we waited for dozens of years, let alone this little bit of time. Tiange, you don't need to worry. At least now we see hope." Mo Tiange looked at him and sighed softly. "I understand." Although she said that, her heart was still heavy. Not to mention whether this transporting formation could be repaired, even if she finished repairing it without any mistakes, she wasn't sure whether it could still be used. In order to return to the celestial pole, she had waited for so long that she even doubted whether she could go back. "Then should we go find the materials for the formation first?" Jing Xingji asked, then shook his head. "Forget it. You two stay here. I'll go find them. It'll save time." Mo Tiange didn't refuse. This transporting formation was very complicated. At the very least, it was left behind from the distant past era, so its materials must be very precious. The more precious the materials, the fewer the source. There wasn't much difference between one person looking for it and 3 people looking for it. It was better to stay here and study how to repair the damaged parts. Then I'll go. Jing Xingji scraped some of the materials for the formation, then turned around and left. Mo Tiange watched his back disappear, but she didn't withdraw her gaze until Xianxia asked her, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking, will he go back to the celestial pole with us?" She looked at Xianxia with confusion. "Why do I feel he's too proactive?" Xianxia smiled. "I can't answer that. This guy, who can say for sure?" He paused for a moment, then sighed silently. "But this transporting formation, whether it can send us back to the celestial pole or not, we owe him a big favor." In the Immortal Palace, he had saved Jing Xingji once. Later on, when they were in danger, Jing Xingji did not abandon them. He even risked his life in the heavenly tribulation and used his ultimate move. If that could be considered even, then now, he told them the location of the transporting formation and ran around for them. This favor couldn't be erased. Upon hearing this, Mo Tiange smiled. "What are you afraid of? Owing him a favor is always better than owing him feelings. Besides, I'm afraid he doesn't even think about this favor, right?" Chapter 517. Some people extended a helping hand because they regarded you as a friend, but if you kept thinking about returning the favor, it would hurt you instead. Despite Jing Xingji's frivolous appearance, his actions clearly showed that he regarded Xianxia as a friend. Xianxia spent half of his life crazily cultivating. He knew a lot of people, but he didn't have many friends. Jing Xingji was one of the few people he was willing to trust. Mo Tiange didn't want him to lose a friend because of this. The path to immortality was dangerous, but it didn't mean there was no family and friendship. Recalling what happened in Carefree Valley, if Tian Jiqin didn't misunderstand, how lucky he was to have a friend like Ling Yunhe. Sincerity was even more valuable because people's hearts were sinister. Asterisk asterisk asterisk, a ray of golden light appeared in the sky, rushing in the direction of Chongling City. Yan Feng looked up at the disappearing flight light and secretly rejoiced that he had been restraining his breath, so the other party didn't notice him. "This flight light should be fellow Daoist Jing's, right?" he murmured. "Why is he alone?" After Mo Tiange and the other 2 left Chongling City, he ordered the cultivators under him to pay attention to their whereabouts. But how could it be easy to follow a nascent soul cultivator? It didn't take long for him to lose track of them. Yan Feng decided to act himself, wanting to see if the 3 of them had other purposes. Unexpectedly, he couldn't find any traces until he finally saw Jing Xingji's flight light. Judging from the direction of the flight light, it seemed to be heading toward Chongling City. Yan Feng hesitated for a moment and didn't follow. If they went back to Chongling City, Jing Xingji's whereabouts would be within their grasp with so many people in the Merchant Union. On the other hand, if Mo Tiange and Xianxia wanted to hide, it would be very difficult to find them. What were the 3 of them doing? Yan Feng didn't believe it was an internal conflict. This fellow Daoist Jing was only in the early stage of nascent soul. Even if he was a sword cultivator, he shouldn't be able to fight against the Qin couple. Besides, judging from his flight light, he didn't seem to be injured. After thinking for a while, Yan Feng waved his sleeves, released his flying magic weapon, and decided to take a look around. The Qin couple was nowhere to be seen, and he didn't know what they were doing. He couldn't be at ease if he wasn't sure. He sighed with some annoyance. Yuanzhou was facing a crisis, so he hoped these 3 people wouldn't harm Yuanzhou Merchant Union. Stepping on the flying artifact, he circled around the surrounding waters but did not find anything unusual. Yan Feng thought to himself. Even though he was only in the early stages of the nascent soul realm, his divine sense was one of the strongest among the nascent soul realm cultivators in Chongling City. It seemed that the 2 of them had extraordinary breath-concealing techniques. He actually could not sense anything. Shaking his head, Zhang Xian was just about to return to Chongling City when he suddenly sensed something. Turning around, he stared at the distant sea, and his face warped in shock. The surface of the sea was calm, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, His divine sense could sense that there were many sea beasts nearby. The weakest of these sea beasts were only at the 1st or 2nd rank, while the strongest were at the 6th or 7th rank. There were even a few that were at the peak of the 7th rank and were about to transform. Yan Feng stepped on his flying treasure and flew towards the depths of the sea. The more he flew, the paler his face became. Finally he stopped in his tracks, turned around, and rushed towards Chongling City. Jing Xingji left for 7 days before returning. During these 7 days, aside from cultivating and meditating, Mo Tiange studied the transporting formation. As for Qin Shi, he was focused on refining his vermilion bird bow. After obtaining the vermilion bird bow from the vermilion bird sacrificial temple, he spent many years slowly absorbing all the vermilion bird's breath and could finally take the vermilion bird bow out of the yang spiritual bead. The vermilion bird's breath on the vermilion bird bow was very strong, and it was also combined with the yang spiritual bead, so its power was extraordinary. However, it was precisely because of its great power that it was difficult to control. During the heavenly tribulation that day, he could barely take the vermilion bird bow out of the yang spiritual bead. Even with the vermilion bird's flames on his body, he could only shoot one arrow. The power of that arrow actually scattered most of the golden lightning of the 9th layer of the heavenly tribulation. This made Qin Shi realize that if he could refine the vermilion bird bow to the point where he could control it at will, no one in the nascent soul realm would be able to resist his arrow with all his strength. Returning to the cave, Jing Xingji saw that Mo Tiange and Qin Shi were safe and sound inside the concealment formation. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Are you two okay?" Mo Tiange asked curiously, "What could happen? What happened to you?" Jing Xingji wiped his face, then casually sat down to rest. He looked a bit tired. Something big happened in Chongling City again. Oh no, something big happened in Yuan Province again. What happened? Qin Shi stopped cultivating and stared at him. Where should I start? Jing Xingji scratched his head, then said, "Forget it, let's start from the beginning." On the day I returned to Chongling City, a large number of sea beasts appeared in the surrounding waters. These sea beasts were of both high and low ranks. They were densely packed and rushed ashore, attacking many mortals and low-level cultivators. Mo Tiange and Qin Shi glanced at each other. Both of them were a bit surprised. Every few decades or 100 years, demonic beast riots would occur in Kunwu. Could it be that Yuan Province was also the same? But judging from Jing Xingji's tone, this didn't seem to be normal. There's no demonic beast riot in Yuan Province. Jing Xingji knew what they were thinking, so he said, "The waters around Yuan Province have always been very peaceful. Such a thing has never happened before." Could it be because of the Sea of Returning Ruins? Mo Tiange guessed. The Sea of Returning Ruins was originally the territory of high-rank sea beasts. Yuan Province continent suddenly appeared here, so these sea beasts attacked humans because their territory was occupied? Jing Xingji shook his head. If it was only the appearance of a lot of sea beasts, that might be the explanation. However, a few days later, I heard shocking news from the Castellan's mansion in Chongling City. He stared at Mo Tiange and Qin Shi and said slowly, "A new continent appeared south of Yuan Province, a continent occupied by demonic cultivators." What? Mo Tiange and Qin Shi exclaimed at the same time. They looked at each other, both feeling incredulous. Since Yuan Province, Yunzhong, and Shaoyang had all moved, it wasn't strange for a new continent to appear. However, it was strange that this continent was occupied by demonic cultivators. In the celestial pole, Kunwu was the territory of cultivators, and a large number of demonic beasts lived in the forest south of Kunwu. Demonic cultivators were the best among demonic beasts. As far as they knew, although demonic cultivators and demonic beasts shared the same origin, their statuses were very different. In the eyes of demonic cultivators, even if they were of the same race, demonic beasts weren't their own kind. Only demonic cultivators who succeeded in taking human form could be considered their own kind. Therefore, demonic cultivators could be said to be a new race built on the basis of demonic beasts taking human forms. They broke away from their beast forms and possessed the same intelligence as humans, thus forming a new society. However, It was much harder for demonic beasts to take human forms than it was for human cultivators to form their nascent soul. If 1 out of tens of thousands of cultivators succeeded in forming their nascent soul, then only 1 out of hundreds of thousands of demonic beasts could cultivate to take human form. Moreover, they might not necessarily be able to pass the transformation heavenly tribulation. Of course, demonic beasts had a much stronger reproductive ability than humans, and the number of low-rank demonic beasts also far exceeded that of humans. Nevertheless, there were very few demonic beasts who could become demonic cultivators. There were about 100 nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole, but perhaps less than half of them were demonic cultivators. The continent was actually occupied by demonic cultivators. How many demonic beasts lived there? What about the human cultivators on this continent? Xianxia asked. Could it be that only a few of them reached the nascent soul realm? They actually let demonic cultivators occupy this continent. Xingji shook his head. You guessed wrong. It's not that the human cultivators on this continent are too weak, it's that they don't exist at all. Xianxia was stunned. They don't exist? Xingji said, several months ago, after the continent shifted, Yuanzhou's merchant union sent people to explore the way. Those who went north found Shaoyang, and those who went south found this demonic cultivator continent. They ventured into this continent only to find demonic beasts and no humans at all. Xianxia sighed. Sure enough, the world is so big that nothing is too strange. I thought all continents were dominated by human cultivators, but as it turns out, there are still continents occupied by demonic cultivators. Is this related to the sea beasts? Immortal asked. Could it be that these sea beasts aren't from the Sea of Returning Ruins but from this demonic cultivator continent? Xingji still shook his head. No, of course the sea beasts are from the Sea of Returning Ruins, but... He stopped, stretched out his hand in the air, and drew a simple map with his spiritual aura. Look, this is the Sea of Returning Ruins, and this is the demonic cultivator continent. Yunzhong used to be in this position. Did you see anything? Emotienga stared at the map for a long time and frowned. The reason why there are so many high-level sea beasts in the Sea of Returning Ruins is because it's next to the demonic cultivator continent? Xingji nodded, very satisfied with her cleverness. Yes, the people of Yuanzhou's merchant union found out that this time, the demonic cultivator continent only moved slightly to the north, but its position wasn't much different from before. It's still next to the Sea of Returning Ruins. Before, Yunzhong's people only knew that the Sea of Returning Ruins was dangerous and there were many high-level sea beasts, but they didn't know that was because there was a demonic cultivator continent in the Sea of Returning Ruins. So the demonic cultivator continent also discovered the existence of Yuanzhou? Xianxia asked, did they mobilize so many sea beasts to occupy Yuanzhou? Xingji smiled bitterly. It's very possible. When it rains, it pours. I'm afraid Yuanzhou is doomed. There's Shaoyang in front and demonic cultivator continent in the back. Let alone maintaining its current prosperity, whether it can protect itself has become a problem. The three of them were silent. They saw the prosperity of Yuanzhou with their own eyes, but the development of the situation was becoming more and more disadvantageous to Yuanzhou. They could almost imagine that in a few decades or even a few years, Yuanzhou would be in chaos and its talents would wither. As the same kind, they naturally didn't want Yuanzhou to be occupied by demonic cultivators. However, the fate of an entire continent wasn't something they could change. What about the past few days? How's the situation? Xianxia asked after a long silence. Xingji sighed. It's passable. Right now, no demonic beasts above the 8th rank have appeared, and there are so many nascent soul cultivators in Changling City, so it's naturally fine. However, the surrounding islands were in a miserable state. Many mortals and cultivators were killed or injured. The survivors were all moved to Changling City. Right now, Changling City is heavily guarded. If I didn't take the opportunity to kill sea beasts to leave, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to get out. Did you get that thing? Emotienga asked. The situation was chaotic. Presumably, most of Chongling City's commercial market was also closed. If she didn't buy the thing to lay a formation, it would be difficult. Of course. Jing Xingji spread out his hand, revealing a transparent yellow object lying in his palm. The merchant continent truly lives up to its reputation. I took this object and asked around, and someone told me it was called jade rosin. It's a top-notch material for setting up arrays. After some trouble, I finally managed to buy it. Chapter 518. After the appearance of the demon cultivator continent, the situation in Yuan province became more and more dangerous. Due to the large-scale attacks of sea beasts, the once prosperous islands in Yuan province moved inland one after another. In the end, except for several large islands, all the residents on the small islands moved to the land. Yuan province merchant unions sent cultivators to take over those large islands. Almost every island had a nascent soul cultivator overseeing it. Mo Tiange and the other two hid in the cave. The concealment formation completely concealed the spiritual aura around them, so they weren't discovered by sea beasts or cultivators. Qin Shi and Jing Xingji took turns going out to gather information, while Mo Tiange focused on repairing the formation. The complexity of this formation exceeded their expectations. After a month, they only repaired 1/3 of it. Although they were anxious, they could only wait patiently. This transporting formation was their hope to leave Yuan province. If it didn't work, they could only risk crossing the sea and go to Shaoyang. Shaoyang was a dangerous place that cultivators in Yunzhong didn't even want to mention, so it was obvious how chaotic it was. Moreover, even if they went to Shaoyang, they might not be able to find the location of the celestial pole. If it wasn't necessary, they wouldn't choose this path. Qin Shi stood in the air, riding the wind and looking at the vast sea. From time to time, cultivators flew by. These were the troops sent by Yuan Province Merchant Union to clean up the sea beasts in the vicinity. The appearance of a large number of sea beasts made Yuan Province Merchant Union's hesitation about whether to hide the news or not lose its meaning. Compared to the appearance of Shaoyang and the demon cultivator continent, the disappearance of Yunzhong became insignificant. Without Yunzhong, they had to find another way out and couldn't maintain Yuan Province's prosperity. The existence of Shaoyang and the demon cultivator continent, on the other hand, threatened their survival. For this reason, Yuan Province Merchant Union had to change its way of doing things. In the past, Yuan Province was prosperous and famous for its freedom and safety. Even those with low cultivation levels could establish a foothold in Yuan Province as long as they had the ability to do business. Yuan Province Merchant Union was very strict about killing people for no reason and was very protective of low-level cultivators. But now, Yuan Province was facing a severe survival crisis, and the ability to kill had become the foundation of their foothold. Therefore, the status of powerful cultivators was greatly improved, while low-level cultivators had to pay more taxes. Thinking up to this point, Qin Shi sighed. If this went on, the peaceful atmosphere in Yuan Province would be completely destroyed, and it would be no different from that in the Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole. In fact, it would be even crueler. Spreading out his divine sense, he could sense the fluctuations of spiritual energy from a battle in the distance. It was the battle between the cultivators and the sea beasts. After thinking for a while, he decided to disguise himself as a Foundation establishment cultivator and head to Chongling City to gather information. Before the teleportation portal was repaired, it was not suitable for the three of them to appear again. Otherwise, with their cultivation, how could the Yuan State Merchant Alliance let them go? This was the Yuan province after all. If he forcefully refused, it would not be a good thing to become enemies with the Yuan Province Merchant Union. The best way was to make the three disappear. In the face of danger, the Yuan State Merchant Union would not waste time on them. But in the next moment, he stopped and turned his head to look at the source of the spiritual qi. 8th rank demonic beast. He muttered to himself. At that moment, the auras of those cultivators suddenly disappeared. Then, a powerful spiritual aura of a demonic beast appeared. Those cultivators consisted of Foundation Establishment cultivators and Core Formation cultivators. Logically speaking, Clearing the nearby sea beasts shouldn't be a problem. Even if there was a crisis, they wouldn't be completely wiped out. But now, with the appearance of a rank 8 demonic beast, everything was different. The real beast cultivators appeared. Did this mean that the battle had escalated? He restrained his aura and looked towards Chongling City. Not long after, several more dazzling conveyance lights rose up from the Chongling City and rushed toward them. Nascent soul cultivators were also going to participate in the battle. After thinking for a while, Xianxia turned around and flew towards the hidden cave on the island. Back in the cave, Tiange was still concentrating on repairing the formation while Xingji was cultivating on the side, acting as a protector. "You're back?" Sensing his aura, Xingji opened his eyes. "Nothing changed, right?" "Yes." Xia's answer disappointed him. An 8th-rank demonic beast appeared. Upon hearing this, Tiange stopped repairing the formation and turned around. "Is it that serious?" Xi nodded. The appearance of an 8th-rank demonic beast means that beast cultivators have begun to attack Yuan Province. Now, Yuan Province's nascent soul cultivators have also been mobilized. The real battle is about to begin. The three of them looked at each other, each frowning. Although they had long anticipated this day, they didn't expect it to come so soon. If beast cultivators and nascent soul cultivators participated in the battle, it would be very tragic. If they didn't leave as soon as possible, they would inevitably be involved. "There's no time," Xingji said, looking at Tiange. "When will this transporting formation be repaired?" 2 months. Tiange was a bit helpless. "This can't be rushed." The more advanced the formation, the more complicated it was. Yuan Province was so far from the celestial pole, so the complexity of this transporting formation could be imagined. The more rushed it was, the easier it was to make mistakes. "Otherwise, you guys can also help." She thought for a while, then said, "I've already drawn the pattern of the formation in some places. You only need to follow it. You don't need to have a very high attainment in formations." Xianxia agreed. As a high-level cultivator, he still had basic knowledge about formations. It wasn't difficult to follow the pattern. Xingji thought for a while, then said with embarrassment, "I know nothing about formations. I can't do this. Then you'll be responsible for our safety and inquire about information while you're at it." Tiange didn't make things difficult for him. After getting along with him for several decades, she already knew him very well. This guy was completely uninterested in anything other than fighting. She once asked him what to do if he encountered an enemy who was good at using formations. Xingji answered without hesitation that one sword to break all techniques was the highest realm for sword cultivators. If he was helpless when encountering an enemy who was good at using strange techniques, it could only mean that the sword in his hand wasn't strong enough. Tiange could only sigh in admiration. However, in this world, stubborn people weren't the same as success. Successful people were certainly persistent. If he walked this path until the end, maybe he would really find a way out. After this matter was settled, Xianxia joined the ranks of repairing the transporting formation. Every day, Tiange studied the formation pattern and let Xianxia repair it. If there were any mistakes, they would try again. It was impossible to repair such a complicated formation without any mistakes. This transporting formation was too old, and some of the formation techniques were different from today's. Aside from testing them one by one, there was no other way. As a result, the materials used for the formation were consumed very quickly. The formation was only half finished, but the jade rosin was already used up. There weren't many other materials left. Tiange had no choice but to temporarily stop repairing the transporting formation. She gave the list of materials needed to Xingji and told him to go to Chongling City to purchase them. This guy was good at disguise. Back then, when he disguised himself as Jianxin, Tiange and Nie Wuxiang obviously knew him, but they were both fooled. Nie Wuxiang, in particular, was proficient in illusory techniques and disguise techniques, but she didn't suspect him at all. From this, it could be seen how brilliant his disguise technique was. This kind of thing was most suitable for him. Mo Tiange was mentally exhausted after staying in the cave to repair the formation for more than 2 months. Now that she finally had some free time, she decided to go out and take a breather. Xianxia accompanied her. The two of them restrained their breaths and cautiously walked around the area. Perhaps there was no war today or the front line wasn't here, but the surrounding sea area was very quiet. Not only were there no cultivators, but there were also no traces of sea beasts. Mo Tiange was bored, so she took out the 10,000 miles solitary boat from her universe ring and sat inside with Xianxia. She didn't use spiritual aura to control the boat and just floated on the water. This 10,000 miles solitary boat was made from black iron heartwood she found in Xi when she traveled to Yunzhong. Black iron heartwood was extremely hard and could defend against gales and huge waves on the sea. She originally found someone to refine it for crossing the South Sea, but she didn't expect the world to be fickle. As soon as she left Immortal Palace, she accidentally arrived in Yuan Province and didn't have a chance to use it. After looking at the 10,000 miles solitary boat for a while, Xianxia asked, "I've been so busy these days that I forgot your offensive magic weapons are almost destroyed. Do you have any ideas?" Mo Tiange leaned against the side of the boat, stirring the seawater as she answered carelessly, "What else can I do? I can only refine them again." "I know. I mean, what kind of magic weapon should I refine? Do you have an idea?" "This." Mo Tiange pondered for a while then said, "I've thought about it. If it's powerful enough, I don't need too many magic weapons. Take you for example. Although you have a lot of means, most of your divine abilities are on the 3-yang real fire sword, and now you only have the vermilion bird bow. But these 2 magic weapons are enough for you to stand firm among nascent soul cultivators. As for me, I have a lot of magic weapons, but I don't have 1 or 2 trump cards. Although my fighting ability isn't weak, I'm always a bit lacking in deterrence." Xianxia smiled. "You're right to think like that. However, our personalities are different, so we can't be lumped together. I pursue the power to kill in 1 strike, but you pay more attention to comprehensive abilities. In fights of magical power, you don't use thunderous methods and focus on stability. If you only focus on 1 or 2 magic weapons in the future, can you adapt to the new way of fights of magical power?" Mo Tiange smiled and spread her hand. Spiritual aura gathered in her palm, and the heaven and earth fan slowly emerged. After these days of nourishment, the heaven and earth fan had recovered some spiritual aura and was no longer dim. She opened the fan and said, "Although this heaven and earth fan is only a magic weapon, it can attack and defend, trap and kill. If I use it well, it's the same as having many magic weapons." "If you put it that way, that makes sense." Xianxia reached out, took the heaven and earth fan, and looked at it carefully. He was puzzled. That day, the azure dragon clearly appeared, but why can't I feel its breath? Maybe it's because I haven't been able to tap its potential. Mo Tiange was also puzzled. If I can find a way to summon the azure dragon, this magic weapon of mine, even if it can't compare to your vermilion bird bow, can at least fight it. The vermilion bird bow was forged by ancient cultivators, and its refining method was much more brilliant than the heaven and earth fan. In this regard, the heaven and earth fan couldn't compare. Also, Mo Tiange said hesitantly, "Before Master Fu Yaozi disappeared that day, he passed his secret techniques to me, including some magic weapons suitable for the body of origin. It's just that the materials are too difficult to find." Chapter 5:19. All of a sudden, a dazzling flight light appeared on the horizon, rushing towards them. Behind this flight light were 2 rays of light, 1 green and 1 red, which carried the unique aura of demonic beasts. Mo Tiange and Xianxia's expressions turned serious when they saw them. Needless to say, Xianxia summoned his flying cloud and flew up. Mo Tiange also put away her 10,000 miles solitary boat and went to meet them. The one who came was Xingxi. They were already very familiar with this flight light, but what was going on behind him? Were they targeted by demonic cultivators? 9th rank demonic beasts. As the flight light got closer and closer, the 2 of them looked at each other and took out their magic weapons. Mo Tiange also released her jade bone puppet. Upon seeing them, Xingxi was overjoyed. Quick, kill them. Xianxia frowned and asked him, how did you provoke them? They're actually two 9th-rank demonic beasts. I'll tell you later. Xianxia shook his arm, and the sword intent around him became fierce and murderous. Xianxia and Xianxia had been restraining their auras. These two demonic beasts chased Xianxia all the way here. Although they noticed them early on, they didn't take them seriously. It wasn't until now that they stopped restraining their auras that they realized these two human cultivators had a cultivation level similar to theirs. However, it was too late. Xianxia and Xianxia had already taken action. The two of them blocked their escape route, one on the left and the other on the right. With a whistling sound, Xianxia's body burst with dazzling sword light. In an instant, it transformed into countless sword lights and attacked the nearest blue demonic beast. These two demonic beasts originally looked like humans. Seeing their escape route was blocked, they made a prompt decision to show their true forms and went to meet them. They were 9th-rank demonic cultivators with extremely high intelligence. Seeing that Xianxia was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm and Xianxia had a jade bone puppet, they immediately planned to attack Xianxia and break out of the encirclement. Unfortunately, although they reacted quickly, Xianxia was already prepared. With a wave of his sleeve, the three yang real fire appeared out of thin air and transformed into invisible sword lights, rushing towards the red demonic beast behind them. Upon seeing this, the red demonic beast had to retreat several feet to avoid the sword lights. Their joint attack instantly failed, and the blue demonic beast in front had to face Xianxia alone. Although his cultivation level was slightly lower than that of the green demonic beast, a sword cultivator's battle prowess and powerful body were more than enough to make up for this gap. In reality, if not for encountering two Tier 9 demon beasts at the same time, Xianxia wouldn't need to flee at all. Right now, with Xianxia dealing with the red demonic beast in the back, he alone was enough to deal with this cyan demonic beast. Xianxia held the heaven and earth fan in her hand and didn't participate in the battle. The jade bone puppet was also standing quietly not far from her. Her magic weapons were all destroyed, and Xianxia and Xianxia could handle the situation in front of them. There was no need for them to intervene. She and the jade bone puppet were standing in a very delicate position, blocking the two demonic beasts' path. Just by standing there, they were able to restrict the two demonic beasts. Humph! Xianxia gnashed his teeth. His sword light was like a torrential downpour as it struck the green demonic beast. He was not a person who was willing to suffer a loss. He had been chased by these two demonic beasts all the way and had a belly full of anger. Now that there was a chance for revenge, how could he let it go? In the face of Xianxia's attack, the green demonic beast opened its mouth, and a gale rose to meet the sword light. It turned out to be a demonic beast that only practiced wind element magic. The sword light was blocked by the wind shield. Xianxia sneered. Instead of retreating, he advanced and rushed towards the green demonic beast. Swish! The sword light approached inch by inch, wanting to tear the wind shield apart. On Xianxia's side, it was a demonic beast with fire element. Demonic beasts with fire element had always been the most difficult to deal with. Unfortunately, it encountered Xianxia. Which fire in the world could compare to the vermilion bird's flame? With one strike, the demonic beast's fire technique was completely dispersed. This made the red demonic beast extremely surprised. It paused for a moment then asked, "You're a human, so why does your real fire have the aura of a divine beast?" The demonic beast's innate intuition made it feel that the grade of Xianxia's real fire was far above its own. Moreover, it had a powerful aura of a divine beast. However, compared to the three demonic cultivators in the secret place of Returning Ruins Sea, it was a bit inferior. As soon as the three demonic cultivators fought with Xianxia, they recognized the aura of his real fire. It belonged to the vermilion bird, but this demonic beast didn't have the experience of ancient demonic cultivators. "Why should I explain it to you?" Xianxia said faintly. The demonic beast wanted to say something, but Xianxia turned her head and saw two flight lights appearing in the direction of Changling City. Their momentum was very strong, so they must be nascent soul cultivators. She shouted, "Finish this quickly. Someone's coming." It wouldn't be good to run into nascent soul cultivators of Chongling City at this time. Upon hearing this, Xianxia glanced at those flight lights. The 3 young real fire swords' light shone brightly. 1 turned into 2, 2 turned into 4, and suddenly, it turned into hundreds of sword lights, forming a sword formation that covered the head of the red demonic beast. The demonic beast was shocked. Xianxia's vermilion bird's flame was of a higher grade than its real fire, so it was already at a disadvantage. However, Xianxia's sword formation was extremely sharp. In a moment of desperation, it opened its mouth and spat out a huge red inner core, planning to launch a life-risking attack. Mo Tianga's expression changed slightly. If a 9th-rank demonic beast exploded its inner core, the 3 of them would be seriously injured at such a close distance. Xianxia reacted quickly. The moment he saw the demonic beast's inner core, a vermilion bird's flame suddenly sprang up and swallowed the beast core. Boom! The beast core exploded. Unfortunately, when it exploded, it was already surrounded by the vermilion bird's flame. The vermilion bird's flame swayed, but it swallowed all the spiritual aura in the fire attribute beast core. Losing its inner core was tantamount to losing its cultivation level. Its huge body fell towards the sea. The 3 young real fire swords' sword lights merged into its body. With a stab and a flick, it quickly killed the demonic beast. After killing 1 demonic beast, the rest was easy. Xianxia and Xingji jointly attacked and killed the green demonic beast in 2 or 3 moves. Soon after, they put away the 2 demonic beasts' corpses. The 3 of them immediately concealed their breaths and fled towards the hidden cave on the island. Not long after their figures disappeared, 2 nascent soul cultivators arrived. They were a man and a woman. They were Chongling City Lord Fang Qingyu and Elder Yan Feng. Standing in midair, Fang Qingyu looked at the bloodstains on the sea in silence. Lord, Yan Feng said in a low voice, "These 3 people must be the Qin couple and fellow Daoist Jing." Fang Qingyu nodded lightly and sighed. I really didn't realize they had this kind of strength before. 2 9th-rank demonic beasts were killed so easily. What a pity, what a pity. 9th-rank demonic beasts were equivalent to middle-stage nascent soul cultivators. Even if they outnumbered them, being able to kill them so quickly showed their strength. Yan Feng frowned and said, I really don't understand. What do they want to do? In the current situation, Yuan province is in chaos. Can they do anything good? Why don't they join hands with us? Fang Qingyu smiled and said, they have other plans, so there's no need to force them. At the very least, we're certain they won't be our enemies. Be that as it may, but no need to say any more. Fang Qingyu raised his hand and interrupted Yan Feng. Not to mention that they're not Yuan province cultivators, but even if they were, we wouldn't care. This time, they killed 2 9th-rank demonic beasts, which helped us a lot. There's no need to haggle over it. Yan Feng was silent. In the end, he sighed helplessly. Yes, Castellan. Fang Qingyu waved her hand, then turned around and flew back to Chongling City. Let's go back. We still have a lot of things to do, so we don't need to care about them. At this time, Mo Tiange and the other 2 had already returned to the cave where the transporting formation was located. What happened? Mo Tiange asked, didn't you go to Chongling City to buy things? How did you provoke a beast cultivator? Moreover, his cultivation level was in the 9th rank. Xingji said with an innocent expression, I went to buy things, but wasn't it convenient? I just went to scout the situation and see how the fight was going. Who would have thought that I would run into 2 high-rank demonic beasts when I went there? It was obviously very peaceful recently. Mo Tiange was speechless for a while, then asked, did you buy that thing? Of course. Xingji took out a qiankuan bag from his robe and threw it to her. Take a look. Is it enough? Mo Tiange opened the qiankuan bag and nodded. It should be enough. She then asked curiously, didn't they say most of Chongling City's markets are closed? How did you get it in such a short time? Xingji looked complacent. It's a secret. I won't tell you. Mo Tiange really wanted to pour a basin of water on his head when she saw his expression. All right, Qin, she said in a timely manner, Our whereabouts have been discovered. As long as they're not stupid, those people will definitely guess it's us. We'd better not go out and quickly repair the transporting formation so we can leave. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome if we get involved. Mo Tiange agreed. If nothing unexpected happens, the things we bought this time should be enough to repair the transporting formation. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. The situation in Yuan province was getting more and more serious day by day. With the appearance of a 9th-rank demonic beast, presumably all the beast cultivators in the demonic cultivator continent had been mobilized. In fact, the demonic cultivator continent wasn't as poor in resources as Yuan province, but human cultivators and demonic beasts were natural enemies. Once they met, they would definitely fight to the death. There was no need to distinguish between right and wrong. Moreover, after killing demonic beasts, human cultivators could use the demonic beasts' inner cores and bodies to refine medicinal pills or magic weapons, which would help with their cultivation. As for demonic beasts, they only had tyrannical bodies. They couldn't refine tools or concoct medicinal pills. Not to mention Yuan province was so rich, even a place as barren as Owlsun was still worth fighting over. After killing human cultivators, the beast cultivators could obtain medicinal pills and magic weapons that they couldn't refine at all. Moreover, the inner cores of high-level cultivators were also great supplements for beast cultivators. Since both sides could increase their cultivation levels by killing each other, fighting each other became a matter of course. Regardless of the escalating battle between Yuan province and the demonic cultivator continent, Mo Tiange and the other two holed up in the hidden cave, immersing themselves in repairing the transporting formation. They never went out again. After more than a month of rushing work, they finally finished repairing the formation. One high-grade spirit stone after another was put into the recess of the transporting formation, and the formation suddenly lit up. Upon seeing this light, Mo Tiange heaved a sigh of relief. This at least proved that she didn't make a mistake with this transporting formation. Of course, this wasn't enough. She didn't know whether the transporting formation in the celestial pole was still intact or whether the celestial pole was still in its original place. If it was like Yunzhong, further away from Yuan province, then even if the two transporting formations were intact, they still wouldn't be able to be used. However, it was useless to think too much. Whether this formation was effective or not, they'd know after trying it. Fellow Daoist Jing. Mo Tiange asked while standing on the transporting formation with Qin Shi, "What about you? Are you coming or not?" Chapter 520. Jing Xingji didn't answer immediately. Mo Tiange said, "This kind of long-distance transporting formation costs more than 100 high-grade spirit stones. I know you don't care about these spirit stones now, but you don't have to waste them, right?" Originally, he was a little sad, but in the end, it was destroyed by Mo Tiange's words. Jing Xingji glared at Qin Shi rather angrily. Qin Shi just smiled and looked at him, waiting for an answer. They both knew that returning to the celestial pole wasn't a simple decision for Jing Xingji. However, given the situation in Yuan province, if he stayed, he wouldn't be able to cultivate in peace. For a long time, Jing Xingji still didn't say anything. Mo Tiange sighed and said, "Forget it. We don't know whether this transporting formation works or not. In any case, it's not like you can't afford the spirit stones. Let's give it a try first. If it goes well, we'll leave first. You can do as you see fit." Jing Xingji heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. "You can go." Mo Tiange no longer hesitated. She directed a beam of spiritual aura at a certain spot on the formation map. The transporting formation lit up with white light, engulfing her and Qin Shi. Inside the white light, they felt slightly uncomfortable and dizzy, but Mo Tiange was pleasantly surprised. Long-distance transporting formations required a lot of spiritual aura, so the movement it caused was naturally bigger. For places as far as Yuan province and the celestial pole the spiritual aura fluctuations produced were definitely not something low-level cultivators could bear. Even nascent soul cultivators like them would be affected. But because of this, she was sure this transporting formation could be used. Inside the dazzling white light, Xianxia held her hand. The two of them silently endured the pressure of the transporting formation. Before long, the uncomfortable feelings slowly faded away, and the spiritual aura also calmed down. Imotienga opened her eyes. The white light of the transporting formation dissipated. Under their feet was an ancient transporting formation exactly the same as the one before. She and Xianxia glanced at each other, both of them revealing relieved expressions. After so many freak accidents, this time, the heavens finally didn't play with them again. This transporting formation was also located in a cave. However, this cave wasn't deep, it was only the size of a cultivator's immortal's cave. The cave was empty, there was nothing else. The entrance of the cave was completely covered by vines, and only a dim light could be seen coming in. It was very dim. Xianxia summoned his 3-yang real fire sword, stretched out his hand and brushed away the vines. He looked left and right then said, "I'm fine. Let's go out." Right after he finished speaking, he went out of the cave first. Imotienga followed closely behind him. As soon as they left the cave, they couldn't help but narrow their eyes. Before the teleportation, they had stayed in the secret cave by the sea for more than a month and had not gone out. The light in the cave was very dim, but outside, it was bright and sunny. They were not used to it. Imotienga raised her head and looked around. She felt that her surroundings were very familiar. She seemed to have seen this kind of landscape and this kind of vegetation somewhere before. The two of them covered up the entrance of the cave again. After walking for a while, they flew into the air to prevent others from discovering the teleportation array. So it's here. Looking down from the sky, the surrounding terrain was clear at a glance, so Imotienga immediately recognized this place. This teleportation array was actually located at the foot of Demonic Mountain. Demonic Mountain was huge, and the terrain was very complicated. In addition, this place was close to restrictions, so normally, no one would come here. No one would have thought that there was actually an intact ancient teleportation array hidden here. Xingji said he found this teleportation array when he was adventuring in the past. Now that the two of them found the teleportation array on Demonic Mountain, it wasn't difficult to guess what happened. That year, when the restrictions on Demonic Mountain collapsed, Xingji came out in advance and escaped. However, he didn't return to Gujian sect. Maybe he was hiding nearby to recuperate and cultivate, and that was how he found this teleportation array. As for Venerable Swordsman Fuling, who died on Demonic Mountain, his disciple took Tang Shen to Yuheng Mountain to recuperate. Later, the two of them met and fought. Xingji killed his opponent, so he snatched Tang Shen. After that, Tang Shen sent a message for help, and Imotienga rushed over. Xingji let Tang Shen go and left alone. He had many enemies in Gujin sect, and he was accused of killing his fellow disciples, so he simply used the teleportation array to leave the celestial pole. When Imotienga saw Jinshin, it was only 2 or 3 years ago. At that time, Xingji had already gone from Yuanzhou to Yunzhong. He must have left the celestial pole after they separated that year. Fortunately, Xingji found this teleportation array. Otherwise, the two of them would have really been trapped in Yuanzhou. She looked at Demonic Mountain and sighed. "We're finally back." Imotienga was also very excited. Back then, when she left the celestial pole, she wasn't even 100 years old. In the blink of an eye, 80 to 90 years had passed. 80 to 90 years wasn't much for most nascent soul cultivators, but for her, it was half of her life. In addition to her excitement, she also felt relieved. The reason why she didn't return to the celestial pole was because she still had a mission to complete. The restriction Wanderer Ziwei left in her mind was a shadow she couldn't get rid of. Even if she had a bright future, she still had to worry about the restriction flaring up and dying. Now that she was back in the celestial pole, she still had 50 years left. She also advanced to the nascent soul realm, so completing this mission wouldn't be so difficult. Once the restriction was removed and she was no longer under the control of others, she would be able to cultivate without any scruples and pursue the great Tao. "I really didn't expect I'd be gone for so long." Imotienga smiled as she looked at Demonic Mountain under her feet. Demonic Mountain was also the place where they made love. It had extraordinary significance. Yes, not to mention you, I've been gone for almost 40 years, Xianxia said with a smile. Let's go back to Xianxia school. Master must have nagged me for a long time since we've been back. Thinking about Lord Daoist Jing, Tiange couldn't help but smile. She hadn't seen her master for a long time, so she also missed him very much. Now that he was a great late nascent soul cultivator, she wondered if her master was still as unruly as before. He must be very proud of himself, right? For someone like her master, whose aptitude was obviously outstanding, but his fated chances were always a step behind others. He was always one step behind others, so he always felt unconvinced. Now that he advanced to the late stage, he would definitely brag and be very proud of himself. The two of them were so excited that they didn't even bother to pay attention to Tiandao sect, which was right in front of them. They turned into two flight lights and rushed towards West Kunwu. A nascent soul cultivator from Tiandao sect was alarmed when he sensed their powerful aura. He rushed out of his immortal's cave, but he only saw two flight lights, one red and one white, disappearing into the horizon. That's strange. On a certain independent mountain peak in Tiandao sect, a bald male cultivator muttered to himself, "Why did two nascent soul cultivators suddenly appear near the gate?" Moreover, one of them was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm and had a very powerful aura. Senior Martial Brother Lu. A red-clothed female cultivator stepped on a red lotus and flew over from another mountain peak. She anxiously asked, "What's going on? Why did a nascent soul cultivator appear near the sect?" The bald male cultivator shook his head. "I'm the same as you. I also just sensed the appearance of cultivators in the same realm. One of them is in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, right? Where did those two people come from in the end? I've never heard of cultivators from any cultivation group coming to Tiandao sect. Moreover, why didn't they pay us a visit after coming to Tiandao sect?" The bald male cultivator also couldn't answer these questions. He pondered for a moment, then said, "Let's keep an eye out for now. Right now, only the two of us are left in the sect, so we have to be extra careful. However, we don't have to worry too much. Even if those two people came with bad intentions, with Tiandao sect's great mountain protecting formation and the two of us guarding it, there won't be any problems. All right." The red-clothed female cultivator also couldn't think of a better idea. She stared in the direction of the spiritual aura fluctuation, then sighed. "I wonder how Senior Martial Brother Lu and the others are doing. I hope they'll be fine." Tiange and Xianxia were anxious to return home, so they flew almost at full speed. Nascent soul cultivators were extremely fast, so in just 2 days, they arrived at Kuanzhong City. They weren't in the mood to rest, but they also didn't feel tired. They still planned to fly over Kuanzhong City and directly return to Xianxia School. Who would have thought that as they approached Kuanzhong City, 3 flight lights would suddenly appear from the city and fly towards them. These 3 flight lights had extremely strong momentum. They were all nascent soul cultivators, and one of them was even in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Moreover, their target was very obvious. They were coming for them. Tiange and Xianxia glanced at each other, frowning slightly. Since when were there nascent soul cultivators in Kuanzhong City? Moreover, there were 3 of them? Could it be that something big happened in Kunwu during the several decades they weren't there? Stop! The flight lights hadn't arrived yet, but the voice had. Xianxia paused for a moment, then pulled Tiange to a stop. "Let's take a look first." In the celestial pole, they weren't cultivators without foundation. There were more or less friendships between the various cultivation groups, so they couldn't act according to their temperament. For the sake of their cultivation groups, they still had to put on a show. The people coming were very fast. In an instant, they were in front of them. The one in the lead was a white-clothed, middle-aged scholar with a graceful bearing. He was holding a jade flute. He was Feng Xiao, one of the Luan Feng immortal companions of Biyun sect. Xianxia also recognized the 2 nascent soul cultivators who came with him. One was Gujin sect's sword Venerable Xiao He, and the other was an individual cultivator, Wanderer Qing Ming. This was really strange. Xianxia was even more puzzled. Although most nascent soul cultivators from Biyun sect, Gujian sect, and individual cultivators had a bit of friendship with each other, these three people couldn't be considered friends. How could they appear together in Kuanzhong City? Upon seeing the two of them, surprise flashed through Feng Zhao's eyes. He said with uncertainty, "You're that brat from Qin clan?" Feng Zhao was a cultivator from the same generation as Lord Daoist Jinghe, so he was almost 1,000 years old. Qin she was just a little over 300 years old now. Before he entered the Immortal school, Feng Zhao was already a nascent soul cultivator, so it wasn't too much to call him a brat from Qin clan. However, among cultivators, seniority was determined by cultivation level. Now, Qin she was the same as him. They were both in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. After a short pause, Feng Zhao smiled and corrected himself. "Oh no, I should call you fellow Daoist Shoujing now. I heard from fellow Daoist Jinghe that you left the mountain to travel. Did you just come back?" So it's Senior Feng. Feng Zhao had some friendship with Lord Daoist Jinghe. In the past, Qin she always acted like a junior in front of him. Now, he naturally called him Senior, and answered, "Yes, I just came back from traveling and am about to return to Xianxia school." What happened in the end? Why is Senior in Kuanzhong City? You and I are already cultivators in the same realm. Brat, you don't have to call me Senior anymore, Feng Zhao said with a smile. His gaze swept over Mo Tienge. Since it's you, there's no need to stop you. Shoujing, come with us to Kuanzhong City first. Something big indeed happened. Chapter 521. Under Feng Zhao's lead, the five of them flew towards Kuanzhong City. As soon as they approached Kuanzhong City, Mo Tienge keenly discovered that the restrictions in the city were very different from before. Although Kuanzhong City used to be a big trading city in Kunwu, the Individual Cultivators Alliance that managed it was only a few individual cultivators in the core formation realm. The city protecting formation and the restrictions in the city were only in the core formation realm. Compared to today's Kuanzhong City, it was completely insignificant. The Kuanzhong City in front of them was protected by layers upon layers of formations that tightly protected the entire city. Its standard was only slightly inferior to that of a large sect's grand mountain protecting formation, and even nascent soul cultivators couldn't act rashly. The atmosphere in the city was also very different. Although the shops were the same as before, the atmosphere was much stricter. People came and went in an orderly manner, and the city gate was heavily guarded, unlike the loose and casual atmosphere in the past. What happened in the end? Mo Tienge felt uneasy. Although there were good benefits in Kuanzhong City, in the eyes of the large cultivation groups, it wasn't worth the effort to reach out, let alone reach out together. The situation in front of them must have been taken over by the large cultivation groups. However, Feng Zhao didn't explain it clearly and only asked them to enter Kuanzhong City first. They didn't know what happened, but they entered such a heavily guarded place. If something happened, at this thought, she looked at Qin Shi. Qin Shi smiled at her, hinting that she didn't need to worry. During the demonic beast riot last time, Danding School's orthodoxy was almost destroyed. Relying on the school's resources, they managed to persevere. Before he left, Xianxia School was very powerful and wouldn't fall so easily. As long as Xianxia School was there, the two of them couldn't be easily touched. Fellow Daoist Feng. Qin she paused a bit uncomfortably and asked, "Are there any senior martial brothers or sisters from Xianxia School here?" There was no city lord's mansion in Kuanzhong City. The original Individual Cultivators Alliance was located in the Wanhe Pagoda in the center of the city. Feng Zhao led them to land in front of the Wanhe Pagoda. While opening the Wanhe Pagoda's restrictions with his identity tablet, he said with a smile, "You'll know soon." Mo Tienge quickly sized up the Wanhe Pagoda, feeling shocked. The Wanhe Pagoda's restrictions were even more amazing. It was so heavily guarded that it could compare to the secret places of large cultivation groups. From the outside, the All Harmony Pagoda didn't look very big, but upon entering, one would find that the inside of the pagoda was very spacious. There were dozens of cultivators coming and going, and their cultivation bases were all above the foundation establishment stage. Each of them had their own business, and everyone was busy. When he saw them enter, he hurriedly bowed and went back to his work. This surprised Xianxia and Xianxia. In their group, there were 5 nascent soul cultivators. No matter where they went, low-level cultivators would always be respectful and fearful. How could they act so casually? Feng Xiao and the others did not care and led them upstairs. Inside the pagoda, every floor was more or less the same. Dozens of foundation-building cultivators were immersed in their work, while a few core formation cultivators presided over them. At the top of the stairs to the 6th floor, Feng Xiao once again took out the token. An independent restriction had been set up on this floor. The restriction flashed and disappeared, and Feng Xiao led them up. When they reached the 6th floor, both Xianxia and Xianxia were gobsmacked. Although they were mentally prepared, they didn't expect to see such a scene. The 6th floor of the Wanha Pagoda was the same as the floors below. There were dozens of cultivators, but all of them were nascent soul cultivators. These nascent soul cultivators wore different clothes and had different cultivation levels. There were men and women, cultivators from cultivation groups, and individual cultivators who didn't show themselves. "Hey, fellow Daoist Feng, these 2 fellow Daoists are?" Someone asked upon seeing them coming up. "Fellow Daoist you, can't you see? They're naturally fellow Daoists from Xianxia School," Feng Xiao answered with a smile. Nonsense. This person was quite familiar with Feng Xiao, so he directly rolled his eyes. From their clothes, they knew they were from Xianxia School. However, they didn't know when Xianxia School had 2 young nascent soul cultivators. They had never heard of them. Before Feng Xiao could answer, someone exclaimed in surprise, "Junior Martial Brother Shoujing, it's actually you." Xianxia shifted her gaze and saw Lord Daoist Xianyin striding towards them. "Junior Martial Brother Shoujing, you're finally back." Then he saw Xianxia and was taken aback. "Junior Martial Sister Qingwei? Senior Martial Brother Xianyin." Xianxia and Xianxia looked at each other, smiled, and saluted him. After the shock, Lord Daoist Xianyin was overjoyed. "Good, very good. Not only did you 2 come back safely, but Qingwei also formed her nascent soul. This is really great news. Junior Martial Brother Shoujing, Junior Martial Sister Qingwei, congratulations." Another person came forward and congratulated them with a smile. Senior Martial Sister Miaoyi. Seeing this scene, some people were astonished, some were puzzled, some frowned inwardly, and some were expressionless. Even if they hadn't met Qin Shoujing, most of them had heard of him. Now that they heard Xianyin and Miaoyi calling him Junior Martial Brother Shoujing, they knew he was Xianxia School's rising star, Lord Daoist Shoujing. They were shocked to see that he was already in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Qin Shoujing hadn't even formed his nascent soul 100 years ago, but he already advanced to the middle stage? As for Xianxia, most of the people who knew Qin she had heard of her. Although she was known as a genius, she was only in the core formation realm, so she wasn't worthy of nascent soul cultivators' attention. It wasn't until now that they saw she also formed her nascent soul that they took her seriously. When they looked at her seriously, they were shocked again. Qingwei seemed to have advanced to the core formation realm 100 years ago, so she wasn't even 100 years old at that time. Now that she formed her nascent soul, didn't that mean she wasn't even 200 years old? What was going on with Xianxia School? One Qin Shoujing was fine, but now there was Qingwei and Li Lingxi who advanced not long ago. In the past 100 years, there were actually 3 disciples who advanced to the nascent soul realm before the age of 300. This was too shocking. Then they remembered that Xianxia School now had 6 nascent soul cultivators. Including the 2 of them, didn't that mean there were 8? 8 nascent soul cultivators, 2 of whom were in the late stage. Xianxia School, the perennial number 2, finally made a comeback? Fellow Daoists. After greeting the 2 of them, Lord Daoist Xianyin turned around and introduced Qin Shi to the other nascent soul cultivators. "This is Junior Martial Brother Shoujing from my school. I presume most of you have heard of him. This is the last disciple of my master, Lord Daoist Jinghe." She's also junior martial brother Shoujing's Dao companion. Her Daoist name is Qingwei. My junior martial sister Qingwei went out to travel 100 years ago and hasn't returned. I didn't expect she'd come back after forming her nascent soul. This is really unexpected. Lord Daoist Xuanin's words were full of joy. When Lord Daoist Lingshu passed away in meditation, the core formation juniors of Xianxia school who had high hopes for all failed to advance to the nascent soul realm and were always suppressed by Tiandao sect. Later, Xianxia disappeared on Demonic Mountain for several years and returned after advancing to the nascent soul realm. Tiandao sect, on the other hand, lost a nascent soul cultivator in the incident on Demonic Mountain. Because of this, the two groups were evenly matched and both had 6 nascent soul cultivators. However, because Tiandao sect had 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators, it still firmly occupied the title of the number 1 sect in the celestial pole. In the next few decades, Lord Daoist Jinghe advanced to the late stage, and Xianxia school was finally on equal footing with Tiandao sect. After that, Xianxia left and there was no news of him for several decades, so Xianxia school lost another nascent soul cultivator compared to Tiandao sect. Fortunately, Master Daoist Lingxi successfully advanced to the nascent soul realm during this period and maintained the situation. In the past few decades, the cultivators in the celestial pole were used to it. There was Tiandao sect in the east and Xianxia school in the west. The two groups were evenly matched. Now, however, Lord Daoist Shoujing, who had been missing for several decades, actually came back. Moreover, there was also Lord Daoist Qingwei. This time, Xianxia school's title as the number 1 sect in the celestial pole was firmly secured. They thought Tiandao sect and Xianxia school would maintain the balance for 100 or 200 years. They didn't expect such a sudden change. Not to mention that these nascent soul cultivators had their own thoughts, they still expressed their congratulations to them on the surface. Qin Shi and Imotienga saluted them one by one, then followed Lord Daoist Xianyin back to Xianxia school. Junior martial brother Shoujing, junior martial sister Qingwei, did you two just return to the celestial pole? How have you been these past few decades? Master misses you very much. Unfortunately, we're separated from Yunzhong by the South Sea and can't communicate with each other. I haven't heard from you for so many years, so I'm very worried. Qin Shi smiled. It's a long story. Our experience in Yunzhong is really wonderful. We'll talk about it when we have time. Master? How is he now? Lord Daoist Xianyin answered, What's wrong with Master? Ever since Master advanced to the late stage, our school's prestige rose greatly. He's now overseeing the school. Upon hearing what he said, Imotienga and Qin Shi both felt relieved. Before they returned to the celestial pole, they were worried that after their master advanced to the late stage, he'd go to Master Song Feng to settle accounts. Although Master Song Feng was alone, he was strong and cunning, so they might suffer a loss. Fortunately, what they worried about didn't happen. Senior Martial Brother Xianyin, Senior Martial Sister Miaoyi, what's going on? Why did so many nascent soul cultivators come to Kuanzhong City? Qin Shi asked in a low voice while looking at the 30 or 40 nascent soul cultivators in front of him. Most of the nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole are here, right? In the end, what kind of thing could make these yuanying old monsters put down their cultivation and gather together? Xianyin was about to answer when he heard Feng Xiao say, Fellow Daoist Xin, what's going on? Xianxia school should also say something about this matter, right? Junior martial brother Xin, you take care of them first, Lord Daoist Miaoyi said with a smile. I'll take care of this matter. Lord Daoist Xianyin nodded, smiled apologetically at Imotienga and Qin Shi, then walked towards Feng Xiao. Junior martial brother Shoujing, junior martial sister Qingwei, Lord Daoist Miaoyi said, You've been away from the celestial pole for dozens of years. After you came back, have you ever inquired about the current situation? Qin Shi shook his head. We're anxious to return. As soon as we came back, we hurried back to our school. We passed by this place and were stopped, so we haven't inquired about it yet. I see. No wonder you weren't worried at all, Lord Daoist Miaoyi said. Lord Daoist Miaoyi said, Every few decades or centuries, demonic beast riots will occur in Kunwo. Do you still remember? Xianxia nodded. Could it be another demonic beast riot? Not counting the dozens of years he left, he was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm during the last demonic beast riot, so it had been 160 to 170 years. If only that was the case, Lord Daoist Miaoyi said with a sigh, this matter is really shocking. About a year ago, the world changed, and the celestial pole suddenly shifted. Now, there's a new continent near the celestial pole, and there are a lot of monster and ghost cultivators living on it. Chapter 522. Ghost Cultivators? Mo Tiange was puzzled. Everything in the world had different cultivation paths. Human cultivators had their own paths, such as Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Swordsmanship, martial arts, talisman medicine, and other branches were derived. Demonic beasts also had their own cultivation paths and eventually became demonic cultivators. But Mo Tiange had never heard of ghost cultivators. According to legend, after people died, their souls would leave their bodies and become ghosts. Ghosts had powers that humans didn't have. But this was only the imagination of mortals. For cultivators, this wasn't the case. For cultivators, humans were composed of the body and the primordial spirit. They didn't care about the soul because it had no power. Besides, once the soul left the body, it would lose all its memories and enter the reincarnation cycle again. Therefore, ghosts didn't exist. Reincarnation was an inherent law of heaven and earth. No matter how high their cultivation levels were, they couldn't touch it. Lord Daoist Miaoyi didn't know how to explain ghost cultivators, so he said, "Junior martial brothers and sisters, why don't we talk about it later? It's not the right time." Mo Tiange looked around. With so many people around, it really wasn't a good time to talk, so she stopped asking. Before long, the meeting was over. The two of them followed Xianyin and Miaoyi back to their temporary residence. Their temporary residence was next to Wanhe Pagoda. It was a quiet courtyard with strict restrictions. As soon as they returned to the small courtyard, Lord Daoist Xianyin asked impatiently, "Junior martial brother Shoujing, why did it take you so many years to come back?" Nascent soul cultivators like them knew about Mo Tiange's trip to Yunzhong. They also knew about the destruction of the undersea passage and Xianxi's decision to cross the sea to look for her. But they didn't expect that Xianxia wouldn't come back for dozens of years. During these years, they could only speculate about their situation from their life lanterns. Not long after Xianxia crossed the sea, his life lanterns suddenly became dim. He must have been seriously injured. Later, his life lantern slowly stabilized and regained its brightness. After that, both his and Mo Tiange's life lantern dimmed occasionally but never showed any signs of being extinguished. This puzzled the nascent soul cultivators of Xianxing School. Their life lanterns weren't affected, which meant that although they were injured, they would recover soon. Why didn't they come back for dozens of years? Before, Mo Tiange couldn't cross the sea because her cultivation level wasn't high enough. But after Xianxia went, this problem didn't exist. It couldn't be that they hadn't met each other in dozens of years, right? In the end, they could only guess that he was trapped by something and could not return for the time being. Xianxia smiled wryly. "It's not that we don't want to come back, it's that we can't." As he spoke, he briefly told them about what happened in Returning Ruin Sea. Lord Daoist Xianyin and Lord Daoist Miaoyi were both shocked and sighed with emotion. "I never expected there to be such a secret place in Yunzhong," Lord Daoist Xianyin said after listening to their story. "Fortunately, you guys have deep good fortune. Not only were you not trapped in the Immortal Palace, but you also profited from misfortune and obtained an enormous fated chance." Lord Daoist Miaoyi said to Mo Tiange, "Junior martial sister Qingwei, your guts are too big. You haven't formed your nascent soul yet, but you already dared to deal with so many nascent soul cultivators, including so many great late-stage nascent soul cultivators. What if something goes wrong?" There was a hint of reproach in Lord Daoist Miaoyi's tone, but it was also filled with concern. Mo Tiange's heart warmed. She smiled and said, "There's nothing I can do about it. At that time, I didn't know senior martial brother had also come to Yunzhong, and I couldn't find a shortcut to return to the celestial pole, so I had to find a way to advance to the nascent soul realm and cross the South Sea. Besides, with Senior Fu Yaozi's help, those nascent soul cultivators couldn't do anything to me. That's true, but are you so sure that Senior doesn't have bad intentions? Lord Daoist Xianxia shook his head in disagreement. Fortunately, you won the bet, but doing this was too risky. Yes, if something like this happens again, I'll definitely consider it carefully. Mo Tiange knew her two senior martial brothers and sisters cared about her, so she didn't argue with them. Speaking of which, those big cultivation groups in Yunzhong really bullied people too much. Lord Daoist Xianxia said with displeasure, if we were in the celestial pole, how could we let them treat junior martial sister Qingwei like this? Mo Tiange wasn't really angry about this matter. She only said, everyone has their own standpoint. She then asked, right, what's with the ghost cultivator's senior martial sister Miaoyi mentioned? Do ghosts really exist in this world? Of course they do. Lord Daoist Miaoyi smiled and said, Qingwei, although you're already a nascent soul cultivator, you're still young, so it's not strange that you don't know. As she spoke, Lord Daoist Miaoyi began to explain. When a soul left the body, it would lose its memory and become an unconscious, powerless mass of energy. It would then enter the cycle of reincarnation. This was a well-known fact in the cultivation world. But under special circumstances, for example, when a soul had a strong obsession before death, there was another possibility. The soul left the body but still retained its consciousness. Since it retained its consciousness, it could cultivate. Just like cultivators who advanced to the next realm, its strength would become stronger and stronger. In the end, it would cultivate a ghost body and become a ghost cultivator. Most ghost cultivators didn't have their memories from when they were alive, but there were also ghost cultivators with strong obsessions who retained part of their memories. This kind of ghost cultivator was the most powerful. The emergence of ghost cultivators was very difficult. First, they had to have a strong enough obsession to allow their soul to retain its consciousness, which was even less likely than mortals with spiritual roots. Secondly, he had to know the cultivation method. If he didn't know the unique cultivation method of ghost cultivators, even if his soul retained its consciousness, it would slowly lose its energy over time and finally enter the cycle of reincarnation without knowing anything. The cultivation method of ghost cultivators was almost lost in the celestial pole, so ghost cultivators naturally didn't exist. Therefore, most cultivators didn't know the existence of ghost cultivators, including some nascent soul cultivators. We originally thought ghost cultivators didn't exist anymore, but we didn't expect that after the changes in the world this time, a continent with both ghost and monster cultivators would appear. What's going on? Qin, she asked, where are we now in the celestial pole? What's the situation on this continent? Previously, Yuanzhou moved, Yunzhong disappeared, Xiaoyang appeared in Yunzhong's place, and he also discovered the monster continent. He and Mo Tiange had long guessed that the celestial pole wasn't where it used to be, but they didn't expect a new continent to appear around the celestial pole. Lord Daoist Xianxia said, let's put it this way. The South Sea is now northeast of the celestial pole. The South Sea used to be south of the celestial pole, but now it was northeast of the celestial pole. In other words, the celestial pole moved southwest by a whole continent? Mo Tiange thought for a moment, then reached out and drew on the table with her spiritual aura. She drew Yuan Province first. To the south of Yuan Province was the monster continent, and to the north of Yuan Province was Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang was originally in Yunzhong's place, which meant that to the north of Xiaoyang was the South Sea. Using the South Sea as a reference, the celestial pole should now be west of Xiaoyang and northwest of Yuan Province. At this point, Mo Tiange paused for a moment then asked, where's this new continent? How big is it? Lord Daoist Xianxia and Lord Daoist Miaoyi looked surprised as they stared at the spiritual aura map on the table. Lord Daoist Miaoyi asked, Junior Martial Sister Qingwei, where did you get this map? Mo Tiange said, when Senior Martial Brother and I were trapped in Yuan Province, we inquired about it. According to the people in Yuan Province, Yunzhong disappeared and Xiaoyang appeared in Yunzhong's original place. I thought about it, then the celestial pole should be here. The two Lord Daoists thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Lord Daoist Miaoi reached out and also used spiritual aura to draw a circle below the celestial pole. She said, "The continent we're talking about is here. It's about half the size of the celestial pole." According to Lord Daoist Miaoi's drawing, this continent was connected to the celestial pole, and the place they were connected to was directly south of Kuanzhong City. No wonder all the big cultivation groups joined hands to take over Kuanzhong City. So that was why. The two of them were suddenly enlightened. There was a vast forest south of Kunwu, and this forest was the territory of demonic beasts. This new continent happened to appear in the south of the celestial pole and was connected to the forest. They now understood why so many nascent soul cultivators stopped cultivating and gathered together. The cultivators of the celestial pole had never been afraid of demonic cultivators. For more than 100,000 years, they fought each other, but they also maintained a relatively balanced situation. But it was different now. This new continent was inhabited by demonic cultivators and ghost cultivators, and it was connected to the forest. This was tantamount to the demonic cultivators' territory greatly expanding, and the former balance was destroyed. Lord Daoist Miaoi continued to say, "This continent is very strange. There are mortals, ghost cultivators, demonic beasts, and demonic cultivators, but there are no immortal cultivators. How could that be?" Xianxia asked curiously. Since ghost cultivators exist, it means there are ghost cultivation techniques on this continent. When ghost cultivators first appeared, wasn't it because immortal cultivators retained their original memories, which was why they created ghost cultivation techniques? He knew a bit about ghost cultivation. Even if mortals retained their original memories, it was impossible for them to create cultivation techniques before their energy disappeared. Therefore, the first ghost cultivation came from the souls of dead immortal cultivators. "Junior Marshal Brother, what you said isn't wrong." Lord Daoist Xianxia smiled bitterly. "But that's the truth. After this continent appeared, we sent people to investigate, but we didn't find any immortal cultivators, but there were a lot of ghost cultivators. If there was an abnormality, there must be a monster. However, this matter could only be understood slowly. They couldn't know the truth all at once." "Then what about the current situation?" Imo Tienga asked. "So many nascent soul cultivators gathered together. Could it be that those demonic cultivators joined forces?" "Correct." Lord Daoist Miaoi nodded. "After this new continent appeared, we found that the demonic cultivators in the southern forest joined forces with the demonic cultivators on this continent. In the past year, these demonic cultivators have become restless. Although there haven't been large-scale attacks, there have been many small-scale conflicts. Especially in the past few months, there have been frequent sneak attacks by high-level demonic cultivators, and even nascent soul cultivators have fallen. All the big sects have come to a conclusion that if we don't take measures, we'll be defeated by the demonic cultivators sooner or later, so it's better to take the initiative to attack and use offense as defense." "I see. There weren't many high-level demonic cultivators in the southern forest, but if this new continent was included, the number of nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole would only be a lot more than the number of nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole. The situation was so grim that if they waited until a real conflict broke out, it would be too late. No wonder Lord Daoist Miaoi said it would be good if it was just a demonic beast riot. The current situation was that the demonic beast riot had expanded several times. If the cultivators in the celestial pole didn't gather together, they would most likely be wiped out. Chapter 523. Junior Marshal Brother Shoujing, you and Qingwei just came back, so you should go back to the school first. It's enough for Senior Marshal Brother Zhenyang, Senior Marshal Sister Miaoi, and I to represent Xianqing School. Lord Daoist Miaoi echoed. The war hasn't started yet, and it's only in the preparatory stage. Even if the war starts, it'll be a long time, so we still have to do what we have to do. Xianxia understood what they meant. In order to deal with the Yao cultivators, there were other matters that needed to be taken into consideration as well. For cultivators, cultivation was always the most important thing. Humans fought against Yao cultivators for the sake of survival and cultivation resources. It was the same for Yao cultivators. Thank you for your care, senior martial brother and senior martial sister. He thanked them sincerely, then asked, "Where is senior martial brother Xianxia now?" 3 nascent soul cultivators came to Xianxia school, and even senior martial brother Xianxia was dispatched. What about the other cultivation groups? Senior martial brother Xianxia went to investigate the beast cultivators' movements, Lord Daoist Xianin said. It's a big deal. Almost all the influential cultivation groups came for the conference in Kuanzhong, and the ones who came were the real leaders of their sections. Our group has senior martial brother Xianxia, the 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators from Tiandao sect, venerable swordsman Yuanying from Gujin sect, and householder Heavenly Herb from Danding school. He paused for a moment, then said, "By the way, you still don't know, right? Householder Heavenly Herb has successfully advanced to the late stage, and Danding school can be considered to have risen again." Really? She was a bit surprised. Only 1 late-stage nascent soul cultivator appeared in the celestial pole every 200 to 300 years. His master advanced less than 100 years ago, but another one actually advanced. So, there are 7 late-stage nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole now? Yes. Lord Daoist Niaoui sighed. During the demonic beast riot more than 100 years ago, Danding school's orthodoxy was almost wiped out. It's still counted as one of the 7 great cultivation groups, but everyone just got used to it. In terms of scale, it's slightly smaller than medium cultivation groups. But I really didn't expect householder Heavenly Herb to advance to the late stage in more than 100 years, and Danding school suddenly prospered again. The world is really unpredictable. The river flows east for 30 years, and the river flows west for 30 years. Lord Daoist Xianin also sighed with emotion. Ever since householder Heavenly Herb advanced to the late stage, the conditions for commissioning him to concoct medicinal pills became much harsher. Our Xianxia school isn't that bad. We also have a lot of disciples in the Tao of concocting in our school, but the biggest headache is Biyun sect. All these years, they've given us a lot of benefits. Mo Tiange also knew a little about what happened to Danding school back then. The reason why Danding school had fallen into such a state was not unrelated to the other 6 sections. The 7 great sects had originally formed an alliance to attack and defend. If it weren't for the fact that the other sects couldn't send reinforcements in time, the Danding school wouldn't have lost their base. Moreover, the other 6 sects had intentionally delayed the reinforcements for their own benefit. In the past, Danding school's strength was greatly damaged, so they had no other choice but to swallow their anger. Now that Danding school had prospered again, even if they couldn't take revenge, they could still discuss the other sects with regards to pill concocting. Among the 6 sects, Tiandao sect and Xianxia school were the most powerful. They each had 2 late-stage cultivators, so Danding school didn't dare to go too far. Gujian sect was a sword cultivator group, so it didn't rely too much on medicinal pills. Zhengfa sect was located in the northernmost glacier and was only a branch in Kunwu. As for Lingshou sect, it didn't have many people and took a side path. The last one was Biyun sect. It had many disciples and was an orthodox Dharma cultivator, so it needed a lot of medicinal pills. Thus, Danding school just happened to have a hold on it. After talking about Danding school, the 2 Lord Daoists roughly mentioned the current situation in the celestial pole. In general, there hadn't been any big changes in the past few decades. There were only 2 things worth paying attention to. The first was the rise of Xianxia school, which stood as an equal to Tiandao sect. The second was Danding school returning to the list of great sections. The direct result of Qin Shi and Mo Tiange's return was that Xianxia school flourished like never before. It surpassed Tiandao sect and became the #1 sect in the celestial pole. After the 2 of them stayed in Kuanzhong city for several days, Lord Daoist Xianxia's group finally returned. The members of this investigation team had frighteningly high statuses and cultivation bases. All of them were leaders of major sections. Among them, there were 4 late nascent soul great cultivators, while the rest were mid-stage nascent soul cultivators. There wasn't even an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. Among these people were Tiandao sect's Lu Dingyuan and Lord Daoist Silence, Xianxia School's Lord Daoist Jinyang, Gujin sect's Venerable Swordsman Yuanying, Biyun sect's Ding Wan, Zhengfa sect's Lord Daoist Wuxi, and so on. Before long, Mo Tiange and Qin Shi met Lord Daoist Jinyang. It had been so many years since they last met, but the appearance of the head Grand Supreme Elder had not changed at all. He was now 1,200 years old. As a great cultivator in the late nascent realm, his cultivation level was profound, and he took good care of himself, so living for another 500 or 600 years wouldn't be a problem. If he could find a way to prolong his life, living for another 700 or 800 years wasn't impossible. At the very least, he could still be in charge of Xianxia School for several hundred years. This was also one of the reasons why the other cultivation groups were even more afraid of Xianxia School. Among the numerous nascent soul cultivators in Xianxia School, Jinyang and Jinghe had the highest cultivation levels and were the oldest, but they still had 500 or 600 years to live. Hua Yan was slightly younger and his cultivation level was also lower, but he also had 200 or 300 years to live. Miaoyi was about 700 years old, while Xianyin was more than 600 years old. The two of them were in the prime of their lives. The youngest, Shoujing, Lingxi, and Qingwei, were even more excessively young. With so many nascent soul cultivators so young, Xianxia School could maintain its prosperity for at least 1,000 years. After learning of their return, Lord Daoist Jinyang was so surprised that he didn't even care about business. After giving some simple instructions, he returned to his temporary residence in Kuanzhong City. Greetings, Senior Martial Brother Jinyang. No need to be so polite. No need to be so polite. Lord Daoist Jinyang said repeatedly, "It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." After sizing them up, Lord Daoist Jinyang smiled and said, "It seems you've gained a lot from your trip to Yunzhong. Not only has Qingwei formed her nascent soul, but your realm is also very stable. If Junior Martial Brother Jinghe knows about this, he'll be very happy." He then asked, "How did you two come back? How have you been in the past few decades?" Qin Shi told him about their experiences in the past few years. After listening, Lord Daoist Jinyang sighed with emotion. Then he asked about how they left the Sea of Returning Ruins, arrived in Yuan Province, and returned to the Celestial Pole. Lord Daoist Jinyang asked in detail, so Qin Shi also answered in detail, including how they were trapped in the Immortal Palace for several decades, how Mo Tiange encountered the nascent soul heavenly tribulation after she came out, and finally arrived in Yuan Province by accident. She used the transporting formation to return to the Celestial Pole. He didn't mention these things in detail before, so Xianyin and Miaoyi were shocked when they learned about the tribulation. Lord Daoist Jinyang was lost in thought. Nascent soul heavenly tribulation. There was actually a nascent soul heavenly tribulation. Senior Martial Brother Jinyang, is there a problem? Qin Shi asked. Nothing. Lord Daoist Jinyang stroked his beard and looked at Mo Tiange with a smile. Every time Qingwei advances, she's so different. When she formed her nascent soul, she even encountered the nascent soul heavenly tribulation. This is a good thing. She'll definitely have extraordinary achievements in the future. He then comforted her. Qingwei, don't worry. Your magic weapon was destroyed, so you can just refine it. The school will definitely help you with this matter. Thank you, Senior Martial Brother Jinyang. Mo Tiange felt warmth in her heart. Having a school as a backer was really different. She was bullied enough in Yunzhong. Now that she returned to the Celestial Pole, she felt like she had someone to rely on and wasn't just a duckweed. No need to thank me. You came back just in time. Lord Daoist Jinyang smiled. All these years, that old guy Lu Dingyuan refused to admit defeat. This time, he had no choice but to admit defeat. You didn't see his face at that time. It was green all over. Seeing Lord Daoist Jinyang beaming with joy like a child, Mo Tiange and Qin Shi looked at each other and smiled. He and Lu Dingyuan were about the same age. They were both late-stage nascent soul cultivators. They were in charge of the number 1 and number 2 sects in the celestial pole and had been fighting openly and covertly for hundreds of years. Being able to suppress the other party was something they would smile even in their dreams. After being happy for a while, Lord Daoist Xianxia put on a serious expression and said, "You too, tell me everything in detail again, starting from when you left the Immortal Palace to when you found Yuanzhou." Xianxia and Xianxia looked at each other. They didn't understand what he meant. Xianxia asked, "Senior Martial Brother Xianxia, is there a problem? This matter is a bit unusual. Tell me first and I'll think about it." Xianxia told them what happened after they left the Immortal Palace. In the middle, Lord Daoist Xianxia interrupted him several times and asked him about some details over and over again before letting him continue. When he finally finished, Lord Daoist Xianxia fell into contemplation again. Xianxia looked at Xianxia, and the two of them looked at Lord Daoist Xianxia together, waiting for him to speak. They also discussed this matter many times, but they didn't come to a conclusion. After they left the Immortal Palace, it self-destructed, triggering the collapse of the restrictions in the space. Then came the Heavenly Tribulation. After the Heavenly Tribulation, the continent moved. These things happened one after another. They always felt they had something to do with each other, but they couldn't tell what it was. If Lord Daoist Xianxia could give them an answer, it would save them from making wild guesses. After a long time, Lord Daoist Xianxia withdrew his thoughts, looked at Xianxia, and said, "Qingwei, I'm afraid this matter has a lot to do with you." What? Xianxia was confused. "What matter are you referring to, Senior Martial Brother Xianxia?" Lord Daoist Xianxia knocked on the table and said, "You said after the Heavenly Tribulation, the storm didn't subside and became even fiercer. Then, the continent must have moved at this time." Xianxia nodded slightly. "Yes, we've confirmed this time." "Then here's the question. What on earth caused the continent to move? There must be a cause for this kind of change in heaven and earth, right?" But Xianxia frowned and pondered. "When we came out, there were already dark clouds outside, so it might not have been caused by the Heavenly Tribulation." Lord Daoist Xianxia didn't object. The nascent soul realm's Heavenly Tribulation has indeed disappeared in the human world. I've never heard of 4 half-heaven tribulations coming together. But I don't believe 4 half-heaven tribulations could cause the continent to move. Even deification realm's Heavenly Tribulation can't have such great power. The combined power of 3 transformation realms' Heavenly Tribulations and 1 nascent soul formation realm's Heavenly Tribulation couldn't compare to 1 deification realm's Heavenly Tribulation. There was more than 1 deification cultivator in this world. If the power of the Heavenly Tribulation could cause the continent to move, how many times did it have to move in the past hundreds of thousands of years? Then Senior Martial Brother Xianxia means, aside from the Heavenly Tribulation, what else happened at that time? Xianxia thought for a moment. The space where the Immortal Palace was located collapsed. "Yes, that's what happened." Lord Daoist Xianxia said, "According to the cultivators in Yunzhong, this space should have been torn open when the world changed at the end of the distant past era. It's existed peacefully in the sea of returning ruins for hundreds of thousands of years, so it doesn't make sense for it to collapse as soon as you came out. But before that, you did one thing. The mysterious void cloud formation you mentioned, the space-tearing technique." Chapter 524. What Lord Daoist Xianxia said was just a guess. There was no way to confirm the truth now that the palace had collapsed. Seeing Xianxia's worries, Xianxia said, "You don't have to think too much. We had no choice at that time. Who knew this would happen?" Xianxia shook her head. "I know. I'm not such a pedantic person. It's just that when the world changed, the continent shifted, and so many people's fates changed because of our unintentional behavior, I feel a little sad." If Lord Daoist Xianxia's guess was right, then when they used the Xuanshu cloud formation to tear the space, they accidentally touched something, causing the destruction of the palace, the collapse of the restriction, and the disappearance of the space. As for this space, it involved some unknown law, which led to this change in the world. This conjecture could be said to have no basis, but the events were closely linked, making people feel that it was only natural. Mo Tiange sighed in her heart and stopped thinking about it. It had happened, so it was useless to think about it. After seeing Lord Daoist Jinyang, they set off again to return to Xianxia School. Lord Daoist Jinyang's opinion was the same as Xuanin's and Miao Er's. Xianxia School already had 3 nascent soul cultivators, so they didn't need to stay. Besides, Mo Tiange had just advanced to the nascent soul realm and her magic weapons were destroyed, so it was time for her to stabilize her realm in closed-door meditation. 2 days later, they finally saw the gate of Xianxia School. On the vast Mount Taikong, the 6 peaks looked majestic, the sea of clouds was vast, and the immortal aura lingered. Everything was the same as when they left. The difference was that the Grand Mountain Protecting Formation on Mount Taikong was almost fully activated, leaving only 1 or 2 exits. The patrolling disciples were several times more vigilant than before, and the atmosphere was solemn. When the patrolling disciples saw the 2 of them, a streak of light flew out from the direction of Soul's retreat peak and flew towards them before the patrolling disciples could greet them. Shoujing Qingwei. It was Lord Daoist Huayan. Senior Martial Brother Huayan. The 2 greeted together. Lord Daoist Huayan nodded with a smile and greeted them. Senior Martial Brother Jinyang has sent a message. I didn't expect you to come back so soon. How have you been all these years? Qin, she said, thank you for your concern, Senior Martial Brother Huayan. We're lucky. That's good. Let's go in first. Dao Lord Huayan gestured for the patrolling disciples to continue patrolling and landed on Clear Spring Peak with the 2 of them. Before they arrived at Clear Spring Peak, the 2 of them could already see nearly 100 foundation building disciples lined up neatly on the peak, led by several core formation cultivators. Upon seeing them coming over, the foundation building disciples said in unison, "Welcome back to the mountain, Grandmaster Shou Jing and Grandmaster Qing Wei." Nearly 100 disciples shouted in unison, their voices shaking the heavens. Mo Tiange was startled and turned to look at Lord Daoist Huayan. Senior Martial Brother Huayan, this is... Lord Daoist Huayan smiled. It's a special time. I can only keep things simple. Please don't mind. This is still simple? If he didn't, what would he do? But then again, from the perspective of the sect, it really wasn't that grand. Without summoning aura-refining disciples, these foundation-building disciples and core formation cultivators only belonged to Clear Spring Peak. Compared to last time when Qin came back after forming his nascent soul, there was simply no comparison. Welcome back Martial Uncle Shou Jing and Martial Uncle Qingwei. As soon as they landed, the core formation cultivators led by Master Daoist Mingjin came up and saluted them respectfully. Senior martial brothers and sisters, no need to be so polite. Qin flicked his sleeves and lifted them up. The core formation cultivators of Clear Spring Peak were all advanced inner disciples of Lord Daoist Jinghe and were much older than him, so he was used to calling them senior martial brothers and sisters even though he had formed his nascent soul. Mingjin didn't dare to be arrogant and said respectfully, Martial Uncle Shou Jing has formed his nascent soul. How can you still call him that? Martial Uncle, please don't call me senior martial brothers and sisters anymore. Qin smiled helplessly. Everything about this senior martial brother Mingjin was good, but he was a bit pedantic. After he formed his nascent soul, he occasionally met him, but every time he called him that, he had to correct him. Fortunately, apart from Mingjin, Su Xin, Chang Kong, and Qing Yuan were more casual and greeted them. Chong Yun greets Martial Uncle Shou Jing and Martial Uncle Qingwei. The last core formation cultivator who came up stunned Mo Tiange, then she was pleasantly surprised. Big Brother Yi? This person was Yi Jingwen. They hadn't seen each other for more than 80 years, and he had formed his gold core successfully. Yi Jingwen looked up and said with a smile, "You flatter me. Martial Uncle is already a nascent soul cultivator, so I have to change the way I address you. Master gave me the name Chongyun. Martial Uncle, you can call me by my Daoist name from now on." In front of everyone, Mo Tiange suppressed her excitement and said with a smile, "I haven't been back for many years, so I was excited to see an old friend." After all the core formation cultivators of Clear Spring Peak greeted him, Qin turned around and asked, Senior Martial Brother Huayan, is my master in Shangqing Palace? Should we go and greet him now? Lord Daoist Huayan said, Senior Martial Brother Jinghe is in closed-door meditation. I'm afraid he won't see you until a few days later. Closed-door meditation? Xianxia was stunned, and even Mo Tiange was nervous. My master, don't think too much. Lord Daoist Huayan waved his hand with a smile. Senior Martial Brother Jinghe is only in closed-door meditation to practice secret techniques. There's no other reason. You came back too soon, so he didn't have time to come out. Oh! The two of them breathed a sigh of relief. They were used to their master's sloppy appearance. When he had nothing to do, he would stay in Shangqing Palace and tease the maids. Now that they heard he was in closed-door meditation, they thought of his injury last time. You just came back, so you must be tired. Why don't you take a rest first? Lord Daoist Huayan said, when you've settled down, I'll come to visit you and catch up with you. Xianxia nodded. Thank you, Senior Martial Brother. Lord Daoist Huayan smiled, cupped his hands, summoned his flying magic weapon, and went back to Seoul's retreat peak. As soon as Lord Daoist Huayan left, Xianxia told Mingzhen to dismiss the disciples. The two of them were about to go back to their cave when a female cultivator in the late stage of the foundation building realm came to greet them. Greetings, Grandmasters. Mo Tiange took a closer look and was surprised. Linbo. The woman looked gentle and well-mannered. She was Shui Linbo. She looked up and said with a smile, after learning about you, Grandmasters, Linbo and Jinji have tidied up the cave and are waiting for you to come back. Oh, where's Jinji? Shui Linbo smiled. Jinji was so excited that he couldn't sit or sleep for 2 days after learning that you two were back, so I told him to wait in the cave so that he wouldn't be rude in front of others. Mo Tiange glanced at Xianxia. The two of them felt helpless and amused at the same time. In that case, let's go back now, lest he waits for too long. Yes. The three of them returned to the mountain where the cave was. When they opened the stone door, they saw someone rushing out in a hurry. When he saw the two of them, he stopped and suddenly knelt down. Jinji greets Master and Auntie. Jinji. Mo Tiange stepped forward and pulled him up. They hadn't seen each other for decades, but Jinji still looked the same. His cultivation level had improved, and he was now in the peak stage of the foundation building realm. He looked less childish and more mature. He was almost 170 years old now. Auntie. Looking at her, Jinji's eyes were slightly wet. You're finally back. You're finally back. Mo Tiange was also very excited since they hadn't seen each other for many years. After wandering outside for a long time, she missed everything in Xianxing school, not to mention that Jinji was her family. Auntie, are you okay? You guys didn't come back for such a long time, so I was always on tenterhooks. Fortunately, Grandmaster said your natal lanterns were fine. Jinji wiped the corners of his eyes, then said with a smile, right, I'm really stupid. Now that you're back safe and sound, of course everything's fine. Jinji, the two Grandmasters have returned from afar. Let's go inside first. Shui Linbo's reminder made Jinji come back to his senses. He patted his head and said, yes, I'm stupid again. Master let's talk inside. After entering the cave, Mo Tiange looked around. Sure enough, the cave was neat and tidy. Presumably, the two of them had been diligently taking care of it and hadn't slacked off. While looking around the cave, Mo Tiange picked up the tea Shui Linbo brought to her, took a sip, and looked at Shui Linbo with some surprise. Shui Linbo said with a smile, Jinji said Grandmaster Qingwei likes this kind of spiritual tea. I wonder if it suits her taste? Mo Tiange nodded. Thank you. Shui Linbo seemed relieved, bowed her head, and retreated. Jinji was about to say something, but when he saw the two of them looking a little tired, he swallowed his words and said, Auntie Master, you've just come back, so you must be tired. I won't bother you anymore. Take a rest first. Call us if you need anything. She patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. You've worked hard all these years. You should also take a rest. Master and Auntie are back, so we'll have plenty of time to talk. Yes. After Yi Jinji left, Mo Tiange looked at his back, waved her hand, and set up a soundproof barrier. "What's wrong?" Qin Shi asked. "Did you keep Shui Linbo to train her to do things?" Hearing this, Qin Shi smiled and put down the teacup in his hand. "What else? With her aptitude, do you think she'll accept a disciple?" Mo Tiange nodded as if she understood something. "You're right. Linbo's aptitude is poor, but she's steady. Among the two of us, Jinji is our only disciple, but Jinji's personality is a bit too pure. Yes. When our cultivation levels are high, it's not convenient for us to do some things by ourselves, so we need our disciples to do things for us. As for Jinji, I don't count on him. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have accepted him as a disciple. With this child's personality, it's better for him to simply cultivate. I don't think it's troublesome to choose a disciple from our sect. Linbo has an unusual relationship with Jinji, so we can't avoid her anyway. It's better to keep her here and let her handle chores for us so that we can concentrate on our cultivation in the future. Over the years, she's been reliable. She's both quick-witted and scheming. If we give her an opportunity, she knows how to seize it. She's a smart person." "But," Mo Tiange frowned slightly, "I think she's very firm in pursuing Dao. Won't this delay her too much?" Qin Shi smiled. "What's there to delay? Many disciples beg for her help. With her aptitude, if we don't help her, can she form her gold core?" Mo Tiange thought about it and shook her head. Forming her gold core with 5 spiritual roots wasn't a 1-in-a-million problem. "That's it. She's doing things for us, so we'll help her form her gold core." Chapter 525. They hadn't returned for nearly 100 years, so there were many things to deal with. Shui Linbo and Yi Jinji handled the matter of the Immortal's cave very well, saving them a lot of trouble. Later, they met up with their fellow disciples and reminisced about old times. The two of them were busy for several days. Needless to say, Yi Jingwen had already formed his gold core. His aptitude was good and he had always been diligent in his cultivation. Before Mo Tiange went out to travel, she tried to form her gold core but unfortunately failed. Over the past 100 years, he had tried a few more times and finally succeeded in breaking through not long ago. Kuang Zhu, Zhan Bai, and the others were also doing well. Kuang Zhu's cultivation level was getting better and better, and he was doing his best to help Zhan Bai reach the gold core formation realm. It was said that this junior martial brother Bai had a very good aptitude and a solid foundation. Kuang Zhu also asked Lord Daoist Huayan for help, so the possibility of him forming his gold core was very high. To Mo Tiange's surprise, after she came back, Luo Fengxue didn't visit her or even ask about her. She felt strange. Could it be that because I formed my nascent soul, she felt it was inconvenient to make friends? With Luo Fengxue's personality, it didn't seem like it. After asking Shui Linbo, she learned that she was also in closed-door meditation to form her gold core. Luo Fengxue's aptitude was also excellent, but she was more interested in power, so she wasn't very diligent in her cultivation. After so many years, she only reached the peak stage of the foundation building realm. In recent years, a group of core formation cultivators at Xianqing School who had reached the end of their lifespans passed away. At the same time, the younger generation of disciples formed their gold cores one after another, and the high-level cultivators were gradually replacing each other. Yi Jingwen was one of them. He was a little over 200 years old, which was still very young for a core formation cultivator. Morning Sun Peaks by Yanfei had advanced to the core formation realm earlier than Mo Tiange. This junior martial brother Bai had a single spiritual root and successfully advanced to the core formation realm at the age of 130. He could be considered a promising young man. Unfortunately, with Qin Shoujing, Li Lingxi, and Mo Qingwei ahead of him, his cultivation speed could only be considered passable. To Mo Tiange's surprise, junior martial sister Jiang of Drifting Cloud Peak also succeeded in forming her gold core. According to Shui Linbo's report, after experiencing the shock of Bai Yanfei's marriage and Lord Daoist Lingshu's death, this junior sister Jiang put away her unruly temperament and devoted herself to cultivation. At the age of 160, she advanced to the core formation realm. On the contrary, senior martial sister Wu, whom Bai Yanfei married, never succeeded in forming her gold core. After spending a few days with martial uncle Wu, Shui Linbo grew bolder and said to Imo Tiange, "Martial uncle Wu's aptitude is quite good. If he didn't take care of secular affairs for martial uncle Bai every day, maybe he would have succeeded in forming his gold core a few years ago." She spoke implicitly, but Imo Tiange understood what she was trying to say. Senior martial sister Wu was Lord Daoist Miaoyi's last disciple, so one could imagine her aptitude. She was slightly older than him and should be around 190 years old. As a nascent soul cultivator's advanced inner disciple, it was very common for her to reach core formation at this age. Back then, junior martial sister Jiang was frustrated in love, and senior martial sister Wu unexpectedly won. Who could have foreseen this day? If Bai Yanfei hadn't chosen senior martial sister Wu, junior martial sister Jiang might not have succeeded in forming her gold core. If she hadn't married Bai Yanfei, senior martial sister Wu might have advanced to the gold core formation realm a long time ago. Bai Yanfei married senior martial sister Wu because he wanted to find a suitable dual cultivation partner. With his single spiritual root, he definitely wouldn't choose a female cultivator who couldn't form her gold core. Today's situation was beyond his expectation. In addition, not everyone in the younger generation successfully formed their gold core. Some people died unexpectedly. That person was Wei Jiasi. Before Imo Tiange formed her gold core, eldest martial sister Han Qingyu, who was under Lord Daoist Xianxia, succeeded in forming her gold core. As for second martial sister Wei Jiasi, she was still stuck in the foundation building realm until she left the mountain. Shui Linbo said she couldn't advance to the gold core formation realm. Seeing that she was getting older and older, she made up her mind to form her gold core by force. As a result, she suffered from qi energy deviation and died unexpectedly. After this incident, the grandmasters of each peak ordered their disciples not to forcibly make realm breakthroughs if their mental state wasn't strong enough. After hearing this news, Imo Tiange was silent for a long time. Although that senior martial sister Wei was arrogant, she wasn't a bad person. It was just that because she was trapped by her emotions and entered a demonic barrier, she ended up like this, which really made people sigh. As for Wan Mingzhu, her condition had improved a lot in the past few years. Han Qingyu and Luo Fengxue took good care of her, so she had a good life on Sweet Dew Peak. A few days later, when everything was settled, Shangqing Palace finally sent news that Lord Daoist Jinghe had come out of his closed-door meditation. Imo Tiange and Qin Shi were overjoyed. They immediately went to Shangqing Palace to pay their respects. They hadn't been back for more than 80 years. Although the maids in Shangqing Palace still had the same names, the people had changed. The original maids were getting older, so they either went back to concentrate on cultivating or looked for other jobs. After all, although there were many benefits to being a nascent soul grandmaster's maids, they couldn't do it forever. They were already more than 200 years old. If their cultivation levels didn't improve, they would only have 100 years left before they passed away. None of these new maids recognized them. The new Mingxia welcomed them into Shangqing Palace with bewilderment. At first glance, the two of them saw Lord Daoist Jinghe sitting on the dragon throne, flipping through a book. He was obviously more than 1,000 years old, but he still looked the same. He didn't age at all. He had black hair, a short beard, a golden crown, and a brocade robe, giving off a threatening aura of nobility. Even though he was sitting very seriously at the moment, he still gave off a lazy and indulgent aura. Imo Tiange was a bit absent-minded as she watched this scene. It was as if time had never passed and she had returned to the first time she saw this master. Master! Upon seeing them coming in, Lord Daoist Jinghe looked up. In the next moment he threw the book in his hand at them. Two little brats. He scowled and glared at them. You've really grown up. You left and didn't come back. How many years has it been? It's fine if you didn't come back, but you didn't even send a message. Chirp, 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 chirp. The two of them lowered their heads and obediently took the scolding. Looking at the lively and angry master, they couldn't help but smile and feel warmth in their hearts. They'd been wandering outside for so many years. How much did they miss this scene? It was precisely because of the existence of this precious master that Xianxia School was their home. Senior Martial Brother Jinghe, Senior Martial Brother Jinghe. Seeing that he was cursing more and more smoothly and showed no signs of stopping, Lord Daoist Huayan hurriedly stopped him. Enough, enough. With someone trying to smooth things over, Lord Daoist Jinghe snorted and sat back to drink tea to moisten his throat. I'll let you go first. He hadn't cursed like this for a long time. It was so refreshing. Senior Martial Brother Huayan. The two of them saluted Lord Daoist Huayan next to them. Although Lord Daoist Huayan's cultivation level wasn't high, he was much older than them and had a good relationship with Lord Daoist Jinghe, so the two of them behaved respectfully and didn't dare to be rude. Junior martial brothers and sisters, there are no outsiders here, so you don't have to be so polite. Sit down. After Lord Daoist Huayan said that, Immortal and Xianxia didn't refuse and naturally found a place to sit. Lord Daoist Jinghe glared at them and shouted, Master, I haven't told you to sit yet. The two of them had no choice but to stand up again. Seeing that they were so obedient, Lord Daoist Jinghe nodded with satisfaction. Okay, sit down. The corner of Xianxia's mouth twitched a little. He resisted the urge to roar and sat down again. Immortal turned her face away and patted her forehead. Okay, tell me what happened. Why didn't you come back for so long? Lord Daoist Jinghe finally asked calmly. He then stared at Xianxia and added, And you brat, why do you look a few years older after leaving for a few decades? Hearing this, the two of them were a little moved. Everyone saw the change in Xianxia's appearance, but neither Xianyin nor Zhenyang asked. They probably didn't realize that at his age, his appearance couldn't change at all, but their master noticed it at a glance. Master? Immortal answered first, It's not that I didn't want to come back, but I couldn't. She didn't need to explain the reason why she couldn't come back, right? Xianxia left the celestial pole to look for her because he found the undersea passage collapsed. Lord Daoist Jinghe's face darkened. Then what happened? Don't tell me it took this brat decades to find you. Of course not, but... Xianxia said helplessly, We couldn't come back. As he spoke, he answered the previous question and briefly told them about being trapped in the Immortal Palace in Returning Ruin Sea. He had already told these things 3 times. Listening to their experiences, Lord Daoist Jinghe looked more and more surprised. In the end, he said with jealousy, You two brats, your luck is really good. You can even encounter this kind of fated chance. Ancient psychic magic weapon, divine beast's breath, a deification cultivator's treasure, and a nascent soul puppet? TSK, so many things. What a big profit. If he had this kind of fated chance, why would he be trapped in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm for so many years? As for the dangerous things they encountered along the way, they weren't important. If they wanted to achieve something, they had to go through hardships. In any case, they were very good now. Girl. Lord Daoist Jinghe looked at Immortal and sighed. I really don't know if you're unlucky or lucky. When you were building your foundation, you traveled for more than 20 years. You were also trapped by others and couldn't get out, but when you came back, you advanced smoothly. Now that you're in the core formation realm, you're even more troublesome. You actually dared to deal with so many late-stage nascent soul cultivators. In the end, you even profited from misfortune and formed your nascent soul. Immortal smiled. Master, it's because I'm blessed and quick-witted. Pfft. Lord Daoist Jinghe glared at her. You're really shameless. Forget it, but he still asked worriedly, Is your realm stable after you formed your nascent soul? What's going on with that heavenly tribulation? You're not hurt, right? Immortal stepped forward and reached out her hand. You'll know when you take a look. Lord Daoist Jinghe pressed her pulse, and his spiritual aura circulated in her body. He was surprised. His spiritual aura is so solid? Her body is also very tough. Even cultivators who practiced body refining technique can't have this kind of effect. Being reshaped by heavenly thunder is indeed extraordinary. When she built her foundation, she obtained Zhong Mulink's 5-spirit body refining technique. When she formed her nascent soul, her heavenly tribulation was also reshaped by heavenly thunder. Whether it was her meridians or her body, they were all tough to a certain extent. In a fight of magical powers in the future, she could be said to have a lot of advantages. Brat, what about you? Lord Daoist Jinghe looked at Qin Shi. Were you seriously injured when you crossed the sea? Are you okay now? Qin Shi nodded. Rest assured, Master. When I got the vermilion bird bow, my body was tempered by the vermilion bird's breath. My injuries were all healed, and the problem of my unstable foundation was also solved. That's good. This was what he had been worried about. Back then, he didn't help him advance to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm because he was worried he wouldn't be strong enough when he crossed the sea. After he forcibly improved his cultivation level, he was also worried his foundation would be unstable and affect his future cultivation. Now that he knew this matter was solved, Lord Daoist Jinghe finally felt relieved. Master, what about you? Have you recovered from your injuries? Xianxia asked. Do I look bad to you? Lord Daoist Jinghe gave her a supercilious look. You just need to take care of yourself. Don't worry about me. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.